man speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while. When will the lonely voice of youth cry, what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
All right. Well, welcome. I hope everybody had a good week. My week was, a week, unfortunately, I guess. But we're here now. We're here to talk about embodiment. So, yeah, it should be fun. And we do have hopefully a couple of surprises, but at least one special guest to help us out. And yeah, before we get to that, let's get our Sampel. We didn't get to the regular grocery store, so we've got these coconut snack bar things, and then I've got some Good Earth tea. Got the Good Earth tea. It's good. We didn't do the marathon tea mainly because we forgot with the wrong tea bag. It's like too late. Wrong tea bag. No Table Rock tea today. Maybe we'll have some later. We won't have marathon tea though. That stuff winds you up. So yeah, let's introduce our special guest for the stream because of the topic. I thought it was appropriate to try and get an expert or somebody with some, gravitas beyond myself, we'll say. Someone who, is probably to some extent known around these internet parts, as it were. And so, yeah, I'm happy to introduce. There it is. It's Herb, and Herb is all the way from DC, and he's here to help us to talk about embodiment. And yeah, hopefully Herb will be able to do that today. And yeah, Herb has a lot of experience. He's got 7 years of office experience, and he's a master level Karen negotiator. And yeah, I think that's significant cred for what we're trying to do here. And I know Herb's microphone is muted, but maybe we have some audio of Herb that we can use here. Sort of the voice of Herb, if you will. Yeah, let's see if we can get the voice of Herb out here, because I think that's reasonably important. What do you have to say for yourself, Herb? What do you have to say for yourself?
Hello, embodiment. Hello.
Oh, I hope everybody could hear that. I thought it was quite nice, welcoming us to embodiment. And look, before we sort of touch on embodiment, I wanted to just go over a couple interesting things that happen, because these are always interesting events, right? And so I was, we'll say, quite pleased with my notes this morning, earlier today, when I'm supposed to have my notes all in order and almost never do. So I thought I had this topic like pretty wrapped up in my head, right? I thought it was good. And then I read a tweet from our dear friend Jesse, of course, and so I had to add what I think is possibly the most prescient and dramatic ending to my monologue. See, this isn't a one-man show. That isn't what's happening here at all. I've been over this before, but given the we'll say events of the past week, people are not getting it, right? I've mentioned this before, but it's not getting through, right? There are a lot of people cooperating, participating, working hard behind the scenes, not just on like some art, right? Which I have great art, obviously. Sally Jo does a wonderful job, right? And I suck at art, so we can tell. But Mark does the board. Need I say more? Or editing, right? Which I can do if poorly, right? But also on the ideas, and more importantly, the expression of the ideas. I can't stress that enough. I am constantly getting feedback from a group of people. And it is not an insignificant group of people. And they are not stupid people, and they are good people, which is really the only requirement. Are you a good person? Good. Come join us. Not much requirement. We don't say, are you disagreeable? Don't join us. No, we have manual. Right? And me, like I'm disagreeable. So we worry about the good. We don't worry about many of these other qualities. And we worry about people helping. And look, I can't stress enough, because I want to mention this, because criticizing this stream is not merely a criticism of me, of Mark. It's not. It's a rejection of the work of a bunch of people who give me regular, helpful, often negative feedback. They are all a part of the body. Now, look, I'm going to talk about agreement here, because that's important too, right? The goal here is not to get agreement, but perhaps to show you how to find, how to work towards it on yourself, like how to find agreement yourself. I think that is key. The nature of agreement and how to have things in common. It's easy to watch anything from the outside, find what looks like a flaw from your external perspective, and look, it may be, but perhaps it's a trade-off. And that flaw that you see would have been worse had it been moved elsewhere. Because sometimes that happens. But is it useful? Wouldn't participating in something imperfect but bigger than you be better than attacking something that isn't what is in your imagination, which it could be a fantasy, by the way? And look, this is just some quick framing, because I've been asked to tie more things together, and this came up last week somehow. And the key to resolving these things, to finding common ground, to true exception, is the topic tonight: embodiment. So how do we conform to the true? Embodiment, not imaginal thinking, not fantasy, not hallucination. Not that these things aren't helpful, right? Because we went over that last week. But we only know the true through our participation, which requires our embodiment. This doesn't solve a problem. I'm not here to solve problems. Because look, you can embody rebellion rather than cooperation. And the only difference is the level of acceptance that you have. You can accept having something in common and things that you don't have in common. And which one you focus on actually matters. So what does embodiment do? Embodiment keeps you grounded. It exemplifies constraint. It gives you humility. It provides you contrast to know when others aren't being honest. The earth has no tonal enchantment. Movement shows you what is natural. Moving in and with nature shows you what is good. This is what helps you determine where you begin and end, and where other people begin and end. Embodiment. That's how you determine these things. By using our bodies to interact with the world, we learn boundaries. We talked about boundaries. Previous live stream. We gain physical, intuitive discernment. We talked about discernment. Previous live stream. We embody the patterns around us. And what does this do? This gets us out of the propositional tyranny that John Vervaeke talks about. We're no longer asserting how the world is with our words. We're no longer trying to use language to manipulate our experience. Because we can't. We can say, oh yeah, when you said that, I felt really angry, even if you didn't. Or you can say, oh yeah, I felt hurt when this happened to that other person. Oh, okay, but it wasn't you. Do you know the difference between where you end and other people begin? Because I'm not sure. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm just not sure. You can assert your feelings, your fantasies, your hallucinations on the world with words. You can. You can. That's why embodiment is critical. You have to get out of that propositional tyranny. You will tyrannize yourself and others without even realizing it. Embodiment gives you a perspective on criticism. When we know how imprecise, nuanced, and uncontrolled our own actions are, our own facilities in the world are, we are less likely to be critical of others because other people make mistakes. They are like us. We are all imperfect. We're all Muppets. I'm a Muppet. You're a Muppet. We're all Muppets. You know, you're like, oh, I don't want to be a Muppet. Too bad. Too late. It's all over. Chosen. Thrown, if you want to go there. I don't know why you'd want to go there. It's dumb, but you can go dumb places. I can't stop you. How do we know that we are imperfect? And how do we know how imperfect we are? Because we interact imperfectly with the world, and embodiment makes this abundantly clear to us in the moment. You see a cat fall off a shelf and then walk away like, I meant to do that. That happens. I've seen cats do that. Cats are kind of famous for that sort of garbage. They just pretend like, nah, bro, didn't happen to me. It's all good. And we can do that too, but we shouldn't. We should have a little humility. We're imperfect beings in an imperfect world doing things imperfectly. Kind of sucks, but it's also kind of wonderful. How do we know the spirit from the body? Spending time in bodies helps us with that by providing contrast with just being in our heads. Video games, not embodied. Movies, not embodied. When we fail to engage with our body and use our body to engage with other bodies, boundaries, nature, other persons, learn our physical limits. Yes, yoga is useful, so are the martial arts. Then we fail to properly apprehend the world. I cannot tell you how much of what I do and have done in my life was predicated on martial arts learning. I have no idea because it's embodied. There's that whole thing about becoming like your parents, and I've talked about this before. Your parents were a certain age when you started to like pattern them, right? Don't want to get into ages and what times people pattern. Who knows? Who cares? It doesn't matter. The point still holds. When you reach that age, you're going to naturally follow those patterns or rebel against them completely. Usually you follow them though, which is success. I mean, that's evolutionary successes. Follow the herd. Because on average, that's the best idea, by the way. Just mathematically. You can model it mathematically if you'd like. I think you should, especially if you don't think that's true, because that's true. Very important. And look, Conversational agreement is easy to get, but it's harder to follow through on, to validate. It's ephemeral, weak, fleeting. It can lead to all kinds of places, but rarely where either person thought the other would get to. Easy to fix, maybe between two people, maybe scale that out. Good luck. Now you see the issue. Maybe you can get agreement between two people if you spend enough time and you have enough rules, or you're both able to follow those rules, because that's even more important than having the damn rules. But what if those things aren't true? That's a big ask. And sure, two people, maybe, no problem. What about 4? What about 10? What about 100? Now we're in trouble. Now we're in trouble. Doesn't scale. I'm not saying conversations are useless and don't have conversations. I'm here. I have conversations with people of a certain type. No, they're not the just chatting conversations. No, they're not supposed to be. They were never advertised that way. If that's what you thought, you need to pay attention. You weren't paying attention, clearly. Not that I haven't had just chatting conversations, but they're called just chatting or just chattering or whatever other little pokey thing I like to do. That's not these streams. It's not what I'm doing. I never said that's what I was doing. We have a body here that we're sharing with others to participate in. There's a lot of work that goes into this. And, maybe most of it's my work and time. I don't know. But there's a lot of work going into this. Let me ask you a question. You've probably heard people say this. I learn by doing. What do you think that means? I learn by doing. I'll just leave that there for you to ponder. Embodiment might be the consequences of your framing. Jesse mentioned this on Twitter. Jesse always feeds me good little nuggets when he can, and he does a wonderful job. And hopefully he'll be able to join us, maybe even on time for once. Who knows? He's an artist. Gotta forgive him. Look, this means that you can frame things that your body cannot do, but learn about that later. This is that imaginal that we were talking about last week. You might believe, if you are a materialist, that this isn't true. I'm sure you can come up with examples, but let me tell you about the 4-minute mile. Everyone thought that it was a physical barrier, that no human could ever break the 4-minute mile. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be done until someone did it. How did they do it? They just had a different attitude. They were like, it can be done. That was the framing. And then they do it, and then everybody else does it, like a tidal wave of people. Once they saw it done, they could do it, but not before. And the first person to do it didn't see it done. That's the power of the imaginal. That's the power of fantasy. That's why we need these things. It breaks Zeno's paradox. How do you get to the wall in a material world? You can't. You actually can't. You can only touch the wall in a material world or reach a goal in the material world when you're not only in the material world. You have to go into this imaginal realm, right, where you can reach the wall. You have to believe that you can reach the wall. You have to believe that a human being can run a certain speed. You have to believe these things. And you can come up with counterexamples. We could say, oh, that won't work for gravity. Although some people say you can defy gravity. That doesn't mean it doesn't work at all. And examples are nice, but single instances cannot be universalized. The world is complex. And I know people are doing that now. They're just finding a rebellion, a way to, oh, I've got this one example that disproves all your other examples. One example doesn't disprove all the other examples. It's not how the world works. How do we conform to the true, to what is true in the world? Embodiment, not imaginal thinking. Not that it isn't helpful, but we only know the true through our participation, which requires our embodiment. We talked about participation. It's in a previous live stream. This doesn't solve a problem because you can embody rebellion, you can embody war, you can embody fighting and criticism and all kinds of things rather than cooperation. And the only difference is that if you accept what is common and what is not. If you don't do that, the cooperation turns into opposition. You try to embody beliefs, but when you have bad beliefs, you just corrupt. You can see this physically, or at least some people can. I can see it very clearly. I can just look at people and go, oh, that person's a problem or got problems or whatever. And look, Peterson talks about this. You believe what you act out. The action, the embodiment is the manifestation of your beliefs, and the non-manifest beliefs are things no one else can participate with. Unless they share the same delusion, which muddies the waters for sure. This is why the internet is dangerous. It's easy to propositionally pretend. And I'm going to say all propositions are pretend, in fact, because they're imprecise and they're inaccurate. Language just sucks. It's got problems. But you can pretend that you're acting out things that you're not acting out. I've done it with people. I've done it outside the internet. It's not that hard. You can do that. But it's quite dangerous indeed, because you also need it. You need to be able to envision breaking the record to break the record. Otherwise, you're going to break the record. Except maybe by accident. Is that what you want to rely on? It's just not all you need. And just because you can imagine it, purple talking unicorn that talks back to you and you talk to it, it doesn't mean you can manifest it. Or anyone can, or a group can. Acting as if is dangerous indeed. But lots of stuff is in the middle of that. Groups can manifest bad things for a very long time before those things burn out. Momentum is a thing. And this is part of how exemplification and mimicry is bad. And this is why virtue is important. When we cannot discern virtues and values, we cannot judge what to act out. We need to find commonality in a higher space than that which is constrained by mere material, by matter, by physicality. If we stay stuck at the layer of physicality, matter, material, we will be in opposition with each other, with ourselves, with others. It's just not good. You have to rise above into that ethereal realm, into the ephemeral, to find the commonality that we need to cooperate with together. And how do we do this? We live in a world with nature, with persons, with ourselves, not some fantasy on a screen, not some text from others who think like us. Plant a garden, get a dog, raise some chickens, go fishing with your friends, go camping, start a fire, tend a fire. Sit in silent contemplation, rumination, perhaps, and enjoy the interaction with yourself. I've talked about this before. What is the measure of a man? People ask me this, or have asked me this many times. How long can that person sit in a room alone, staring at a blank wall? Most people can't even imagine doing it. Like that song by Alanis Morissette, right? Where she stops and then resumes. She asks, why are you so petrified of silence? Here, can you handle this? And then it stops. Did you think about your bills, your ex, your deadlines, or when you think you're going to die? Or did you long for the next distraction? When we ruminate properly, we test our embodiment in our heads. And maybe that's what proper rumination is. Contemplation of your embodiment in a model of reality. That's different from, we'll say, pure fantasy or hallucination or just regular imaginal play. Maybe this is the serious play Vervaeke likes to talk about. I don't know. There's a marked difference between unrestrained talking purple unicorns and imagining yourself running a 4-minute mile. Embodiment shows us that connection is not automatic. It's not free. Some of it is not optional, but even that, to do well, takes effort. It takes effort. Just because you live on the same planet doesn't mean you can get together and cooperate. These things take time, energy, and attention. Embodiment teaches us about criticism and rebellion. These are all levels of cooperation, which can be negative, opposing, or positive towards agape. Homeschoolers are embodied. They have time to play, experiment, do things in the world. Impact. See how actions change the things around you. Embodiment teaches you intuitive prediction of the world, that deep, poetic information you gain from interacting with nature and with other people. It teaches you the proper way to do that engagement. We've got our knowledge engine model. It's on the channel. That's what it's about. It's about 4 ways of informing the world. Propositional, procedural, good stuff. Need it. Not denigrating it. But when that's all you use, you get a problem. You still have to participate, and you need poetic connection with the world. You need that information of the nonlinear connections of the world. It's not optional. Embodiment teaches you that intuitive way to predict the poetic connections around you, the ones that you participate with in the moment, in the long term, in the short term. And I don't want to harp on it, but what is AI? AI steals the embodiment knowledge from humans. It's necromancy. It takes the knowledge that's been embodied and translated into propositions poorly, because propositions aren't very good at that. It's not their function. Maybe all we have, if we're talking about spoken language, but they're not good enough at it. It steals that from us, and it uses it against us, except it doesn't use it. Other humans use it against us. And now you have a tool, a technology. Technology is just a lever, according to Jonathan Peugeot, against others. And look, very powerful stuff. And when we give it agency, because we're the ones with the agency, it can do amazing things. But if you have a bad actor, they're going to do bad things. Already been done, by the way. Not talking theoretical anymore. Never was. And look, when you do something in the world, when you are properly embodied, others who have not or cannot do that thing are judged by your success, by your results. Jordan Peterson talks about this. Clean your room, see what happens. Might not all be good. People might get very upset that you're cleaning your room because maybe their room isn't clean or clean enough. Or maybe they didn't want you to succeed because they wanted you to be as miserable as they are. That happens. I got relatives in that situation. We all know people like this. We've seen them. They're out there. There are people that just live in resentment. They live to critique. They're unhappy. They don't like it. Those people exist. And I think it's worth kind of figuring this out. Like, if you can't embody a point, if you can't participate with it, then why is it interesting or important to you? It might make you feel good. I can make people feel good. That's not hard. I don't think it's my job. Sometimes it is, but it's not hard. Saying good, happy, kind, fluffy words in a nice, calm voice is great. Everyone feels good. But if you can't participate with it, what are you doing? If someone cannot explain how you can embody something, then all you have is a description. What is this? Let me give you a description. It's San Pellegrino. Let me give you another description. It's a green bottle. Let me give you another description. It's a green bottle with blue label. Do I need to go on? It's a plastic bottle. It's a 33.8 fluid ounce bottle. This thing's got tons of descriptions. Peterson goes over this. We don't see objective descriptions in the world. We see utility. John Vervaeke goes over this. How do you know things? You know them by your interaction with them. If somebody describes something to you that you're not interacting with, game B, anybody? Well, I can describe game A and I can describe game B. And then I ask those people, what can I do? How can I play game B? I don't have an answer. None of them. None of them. I've asked them. I've seen other people ask. They don't have an answer. Let's suppose they're right. Who cares? No one knows how to participate with it. It's great. You've got a wonderful, beautiful sounding, coherent narrative, a lovely description of a wonderful thing that sounds great, that if it could be, I would be happy with. Sure, but it can't be because I can't embody it. I can't participate with it. It's just a description. That's good articulation. That's Sam Harris. Oh, they're very good at articulating things. They're idiots. Well, you know, the way your brain works is these chemicals fire off, all wrong, by the way, but whatever. We'll just assume they're right, even though they're absolutely not. And then that's why you feel depressed. It's like, no. And so what if that physical description is completely accurate and precise? So what? You can't even get to the chemicals in your brain. You can't even get there. Even if you open up your head, you can't get there. You can't squirt serotonin on your brain. It doesn't do anything. We actually know this, by the way. I'm just saying. We've tried this garbage. It doesn't work. And when we do get stuff to the right place at the right time, our efficacy rates are like 30%. Almost all prescription meds have an efficacy rate of something like 30%. There are some exceptions. Aspirin blows the bell curve. That's why things like aspirin and penicillin, right? That's the reason why drugs are great. And just that most drugs that aren't in that 1%, that Pareto curve, are terrible. And I'm not saying you're not better than nothing. I'm not saying don't take drugs or whatever, or listen to your doctor or whatever. Just saying, be realistic. This isn't some fantasy solution. I've been in the medical system. I was sick for like 15 years, man. And look, I was helped by the very expensive drugs that were $1,000 a month for a while. For sure. No question about it. Not on them anymore, thank goodness. Not that they were bad, actually. They were quite harmless at the end of the day. They're just super expensive. In Canada, in Europe. Wasn't an American drug price thing. Just expensive to produce. And here's the real problem with embodiment. Information that we get from exemplification, that kind of information that's participatory, right? And that's poetic. Maybe you can describe it in propositions. Maybe you can break it down to a procedure. That's not actually what's going on, right? It might be the best way to communicate it, but that information that you get from watching people's embodiment is unconscious. You don't even know it's there. You can't interact with it. You can't inspect it properly the way you can other types of information. It's moving you in ways you can't fathom. Embodiment teaches you what comes next, the importance of sequence, why things matter. Sequence matters a lot. Process without sequence seems to work. It works well enough sometimes, but it's wrong. And you'll never know that from the procedure or the process. I watched a show ages ago. It's probably on PBS, but maybe not. There's so many good shows came out in that model afterwards on Discovery and some of these other channels. The Canadian healthcare system had a problem. Now, it's centralized medicine. So one of the great advantages, no doubt, about centralized medicine is you have a single purchaser. So Canada has one, or at the time, had one purchaser for all the hip replacements. They just buy them all in bulk, keeps the price down, absolutely great. The hip replacement hip manufacturer made a small change to their manufacturing, and no one noticed because there was no visible sign that the manufacturing had changed because it's just procedural change. They swapped the order of operations of 2 items on an assembly line. And because of this, and nobody knew this at the time, nobody realized it, a bunch of the hip replacements started failing. They had a huge failure rate of hip replacements, which, then you got to go in for another hip replacement. Sure, it might be free, but now it's costing the government way more money than it would if they had multiple vendors, say, because then the number of incidents would go down on average, not up. It's one of those little things that capitalism gives you. Sorry. Might be a little more expensive in the short term. Might be a lot cheaper in the long term. And you don't know. And then what happened was, because of that one sequential change, and if I remember correctly, it was just they were cleaning the part with mineral water, and they did that too early in the process. They changed the process, so they were doing it too early. So suddenly they had all these failure rates go up. Because of that, there was mineral oil that got put on the part afterwards and not squirted off by water because they were cleaning the part too early. Took them forever to find it too, because stuff like that's hard. This is why relying on procedures is dangerous. This is why we need intuitive knowledge, that participatory way, that poetic information. You need that. Look, often when we cannot explain something, it's because we've never embodied it properly, or even at all. That's a wonderful idea. How do you expect to do that? Well, I'm just going to start a business. It's like, okay, do you know what the core components of a business are? Do you know what's most important in a business? What kind of business? These details matter. If you've never embodied it, you won't learn that. How did Elon Musk become wealthy? It's not just that he's super smart. He certainly is. It's not just that he's super engaged. He certainly is. It's not just that he's a hard ass and a good manager because of it. He seems to be. It's because he failed in business when he was young. That's why. Because the only way to learn that is to lose a bunch of money failing at a bunch of businesses. And maybe it's not a bunch of money. Maybe it's a few thousand. You can start your own home business pretty easily. You'll learn a lot. Then you can explain business to people, or at least do a better job than you would be able to if you never tried a business. Now, I haven't read the book, but I hear this Bible book has this thing called "You shall know them by their fruits." Don't know what that means, but it might be relevant to embodiment. Just saying. It might be that the truth is known by the fruits. Not the talkie-talkie. Blah, blah, blah. The most common thing that you have with other people is your body. Your ability to be embodied. Do you want to find common ground? Do something together. Cooperate. Participate. Don't even talk. Don't converse. Our imaginations can go as far apart as you can get. Because they're unconstrained. And even if they have constraints, I don't know your imaginative constraints. I don't even know mine. But the constraint of a body, even if that body's a corporation, or a club, or a church, or an institution, those constraints allow us more commonality. They allow us orientation. You don't have orientation without boundaries and constraints. It's not there. Our most common perspective is the one we have when we're embodied, when we're doing things in person together. Look, I'm not saying you cannot converse with somebody and find common ground. I do that. I did that here last week. Watch the stream. A lot of you did. Thank you. It's just hard to get a common perspective with less body when you're further apart physically. Why is it that we have great conversations while we're eating together? We're grounded. Sure, you can nail down people in their perspective, reveal their logical inconsistencies. No problem. Did that last week. Did it work? I don't know. Didn't work as well as just shutting up and eating a meal together. And it's hard. You have to be exact and precise and careful with your words and your speech. It takes a huge amount of effort. When you're all sitting down by the campfire eating, you have a common set of perspectives and goals. Your imagination, your fantasy is constrained. Perhaps even by the cognitive load required to be with other people and pay attention to them. By that physical task. Maybe your imagination can't wander so much. Your common perspective and ground is now evident. It's eating, or it's sitting by the fire, or it's fishing together. Consequences are more immediate, more real. There is more information in the moment, body language, tone. I could go on. Conversation won't save the world. Doing things together in silence will. No, really, it will. And you can't necessarily talk somebody into that, but you don't have to. You can just do things. And some people will just join you. And it won't be everyone you want. And it won't be the people you expect. And it won't be and they won't fail to disappoint you. But that's what you got. And it's still your best bet. Don't let perfection be the enemy of the better. Not the good, the better. You want a perfect thing, so you won't get better because you're waiting for that perfect thing. Or you're waiting to find the perfect solution or the perfect way or whatever. The journey of 1,000 steps begins with the first step. More contributions. Myths and legends are the way we show the embodiment of the ideal. It's how we communicate the embodiment of the ideal. And you can get cynical about that and say, well, they're prepositions. It's like, well, yeah, but we make a distinction between myths and legends and stories. Interesting. Why? These myths and legends are the exemplification. They're the model for us to follow to be closer to the ideal. Note that they live in fantasy and in imagination. We take these myths and legends in the way they're written and we cast them into our brain in a way that they become embodied to us. In commonality, when we have these myths and legends in common, we have common ground in our imagination. It's amazing. It's a miracle. And again, we covered this last week. This is how you constrain your imagination, your imaginal world, so it doesn't go into fantasy and hallucination, but stays into prediction, stays into embodiment, into rumination. We need our imagination to model the embodiment of ideals. We need it because we're not there yet. We need to imagine our future selves, the person that can run that faster mile. As Peterson says, our ideas can die, so we don't have to. We need that. We need that kind of play. Is that serious play that John Vervaeke talks about? Maybe. But it's safe. That's the way we play safely. But again, as we discussed, we cannot live there. We can't stay there. People try. They play video games all the time. They play video games with others, and they go, look, I'm with others. No, you're not. Play video games with others pretending to be something that no one can be. Are you with others? How's that talking purple unicorn doing? Mine's doing quite well, she says. In case you're wondering. How do we know we are close? How do we embody the ideal with our body? Ritual, together. Seems too disconnected from physicality? What's the point? How does ritual work? Why should we bother? Scientifically, how does it work? We've been doing it for thousands of years. It's been working all this time. What is the core problem? Why aren't we participating, cooperating in embodied fashion with the same highest ideal? Because we're not sharing myths and legends. We don't have common ground. We're not ritually together. That's a problem. So Manuel did a series of tweets on Twitter. If you haven't followed him, you should definitely get this tweet stream. It was very spur of the moment. Sorry about that. And his tweets were about agreement, what it is. And, maybe Manuel and I should do a live stream about agreement. It's an important topic. How do you get agreement? And how can you get agreement that's not embodied? Because it's easy to agree in person and harder to fool yourself about it and fool others about it. It's harder to project on other people when you're in person with them doing things, seeing them do things, cooperating, not opposing, no opponent processing, cooperative processing to build something. Opponent processing doesn't build things. It just tears them down. You can be postmodern. You can tear everything down. But I don't think you should. Your ability to cooperate in a conversation is limited because it is bounded by words and understanding, perspectives. I don't share your perspective. Sorry, I'm never gonna. I'm me. You're you. We grew up differently. I'm from New England. Whole different thing. Paul Vanderklay talks about this. Paul Vanderklay and I have no problem clashing in a conversation. We're from the Northeast. I mean, he's from New Jersey, which is obviously the lesser part of the Northeast, as everybody knows. But, we're still close enough. Hopefully he's watching this and chuckling. If he does watch it, he will chuckle. But you're bounded by words and your understanding, your perspective. Your ability to find commonality in action and cooperate from an embodied place has fewer variations and nearly always has a single or a limited set of goals. So you're coming together around something. Conversation can wander anywhere. It can go in thousands of directions. It's not constrained by a body. And when it is, say, when we were talking about like theology, right? The limits are not as hard, right? People can stray into projection, psychological projection. People can stray into talking about their feelings, right? The constraints are not of the same type. And that is why it's easy to get agreement when you talk. But in implementation, everything changes because you have to deal with constraint. And implementation is imperfect. Those who can do, those who can't teach. You want to know the difference between mere illusion, helpful imagination, imaginative play, and fantasy? Embodiment is the key. All right. That was tiring. Anselman Herb does not have tea. He's got his Sampel. Hopefully that's good enough. And look, if you want to join, paste the link. I'm going to pin it on navigating patterns, which is the only place I can do such a thing. Feel free to jump in. I am going to finish through these. William, incarnation isn't intellectual knowledge. It's heart knowledge. Oh, interesting. Interesting divide. Very similar to the knowledge engine model. As a man, it took me 6 decades to realize this. Only 6? You're doing good. William, Jacob Richard crashed and burned so much like me in 2020. Oh, William doesn't like cats. Not a dog. I see. Ethan, spending time in bodies. Yep, that's what we do. That's what we do. And there's various levels of embodiment. You know, there's various levels. So we've just got to be aware of that fact ultimately. Let me pin this message. There we go. Now I'm back. Well, Rob, I'm glad you agree with some of my propositions. We can't help propositions. It's not optional. William, positive aspects of parents follow, but bad aspects don't follow. Right. And if we had the discernment to do that, that would be great. But we often don't. And that's the issue. Like, we don't always have the discernment. Anselman, Roger Bannister. Yeah, that sounds familiar. That sounds like the guy. William Branch, Love Chariots of Fire. Yes. It was a great song. Great theme song. All right, William's giving the thumbs up to Herb because he likes Sam Pell. That is true. Oh, our friend Benjamin Franklin is back. Another description of the battle it's pixels oriented in a certain manner on my screen. Yes, well, that's true. It is just pixels after all. Uh-oh, Jesse's here already.
Hello.
Welcome, sir. It's nice to see you embodied on my screen. What did you think of the monologue there?
Expensive, thorough, and pleasurable.
Well, thank you for the
You embody the principles kindly and great. I'm
Couldn't
just
have done it
making words
without you,
up
my
because
friend.
coffee. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Hope they didn't waste a good Sam Pell mineral water. There will be no wasting of the water. Herb from DC will take care of it for sure. The primacy of beauty. Plato writes something about the notion of being a good person. Mimesis, oh yeah. Re-embodiment. What it means to be a good person is always grounded in a perspectival situation that is its condition. Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it. That's why Plato said it's so hard to be imitated. Yeah, well, it ultimately has to be embodied. Oh, well, you're welcome. I'm glad I could talk about this. Sally Joe, video games are accomplishment porn. Burn them with fire. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Dan Smith, true. Unlike contemporary America, which its strength is its diversity. No, that's actually wrong. Early societies used to bind together and unite by their own rituals. Well, actually, that's what we did. You should read American Nations by Colin Woodard. Common ritual seems to have been thrown out. Well, only recently, I would argue.
Since the
like
70s.
In American schools, it used to be, I pledge allegiance to the flag. In every school. I'm just saying, we threw out a lot of stuff. I have a video on education versus training. It goes over that stuff that got thrown out.
Well, we got off the gold standard. We did not embody the gold standard anymore, did we?
We were not on the gold standard from FDR. Everybody in the United States didn't read any history at all. They talk about that, and I'm like, you do know it was actually illegal to trade gold in the United States after 1943 or something goofy. Maybe it was 45. I forget. It was FDR that did it, not Nixon. Nixon did something else that we could argue is more or less evil, but it wasn't that. Let me put it that way. That's just people being retarded because they don't bother to read. And I'm not a fan of people being ignorant when it's 20 seconds of research to look. Really, you've got a computer. Google it. FDR took us off the gold standard. You couldn't trade gold in the United States as a citizen before Nixon. It didn't change that much, guys. It may have changed something significantly, but Anselman, when you spoke about unintentional breaking of a record, my mind strayed to recall the breaking of a final LP. Well, okay. That's the problem with words. They're imprecise. And I don't know how the hell you're going to interpret them. These nutty Scottish people can interpret words all kinds of weird ways. Just imagine what the Aussies think. I don't even want to know. William, in pre-literate societies, everything relied on body language. Yeah, well, yeah, Greek horror dancer, Zorba the Greek. Indeed, indeed. Neutrino, Nixon closed the gold window, which stopped other countries from exchanging gold. Well, actually, there's a lot of evidence that actually all we did was force everybody to trade gold and not share with their citizens, which I'm not even sure is bad, wrong, or avoidable, right? Because you have a bigger population. You can't give them all gold for exchange. So maybe only the large money. I mean, I've said this about Bitcoin many, many times. Bitcoin's really good for large money exchange. It's just terrible to buy pizza, groceries. That's and always was, because the transaction time on it is huge. It's like 5 or 10 minutes sometimes. It's insane. So, you swipe my credit card, I get out of the grocery store in minutes, which is really good because I had to go to the grocery store before I got here. And boy, I needed every minute I had. I needed every freaking minute. So I don't know if my screen presentation worked. Nobody told me. So Jesse, tell me if this works. I'm gonna try something again here.
We can see Herb. That's about it.
Well, I'm gonna do the Herb thing again. So let me know if if Herb speaks.
Hello. Hello.
Did you hear any of that?
It's very, very quiet.
Oh, it was loud to me. But you heard it.
I would say the audience would find that indistinguishable.
Damn. I know. I wonder if I can fix it here. Hold on. Let me.
Where's it coming from? What's the audio path?
It's from my computer.
Hello.
You can play videos through StreamYard.
Look who's here?
Ooh,
Catherine.
Catherine. Hello.
We did it. Howdy.
Just coordinating on Twitter, making it actually happen. It's amazing.
Thank you for your embodiment.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's perfect. It's perfect. I
I've been
apologize.
told that before.
I did not have enough time to get the Herb thing quite working the way I wanted. But I'm glad Herb is here. It's good to have Herb here, drinking his Sam Pell with us, even if he can't really say hello embodied the way I wanted him to. But that's okay. We were woefully unprepared. It was all last minute stuff. Totally my fault too. I have no excuse. Catherine, welcome. It's good of you to join us. Did you hear the monologue? And if so, what did you think?
I did. I thought it's really weird to live in a time where you have to have a conversation like this. It's one of those, like, isn't this kind of obvious? Like, you have to live in an incredibly Gnostic society to think that your life wouldn't be embodied and that your embodiment wouldn't be where you both gain knowledge, practice, like live. Yeah, it's so distracting. Yeah, anyways, that was my main thought.
Peugeot even said that we it's weird that he has to teach symbolism.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the signpost in this little corner. It was like,
well, I think that's why, because we're not embodied. And embodiment and the poetic information that symbolism gives you are related somehow. I don't want to say how, but that's part of the knowledge engine model that we use. So yeah, I mean, it's all right there. You need that poetic information to participate properly. When you don't have it, it doesn't work as well.
soon to be a podcast.
Soon to be a podcast. Yes. Everything is soon to be podcast, thanks to Jesse's wonderful efforts. Like I said earlier, you can get all down on the live streams in particular. Live streams are a culmination of a lot of people's work, and criticizing and insulting and poking at it. You may think you're hurting me, but honestly, I don't care about your freaking opinion, but the other people do a lot more than I do. So, you got to be a little careful with that. I'm just saying, some people's feelings might get hurt. I don't think that happened in this case because, like, I'll take all the arrows. I don't care. Your arrows won't puncture me anyway. But,
well, Herb seems like a tough guy. I think he'll survive.
Herb will be fine.
He's made of stone.
Yeah. He'll make it.
Catherine, how was the embodiment at Chino? What do you think that came across as a summary?
Well, it's always a little unfortunate for me because I'm a little pulled back away from everybody else, right? Like I'm on the stage, which means I'm not actually getting to have all the conversations and be in all the meetings. So I only have like my slice. I guess everyone only has their slice. My slice of that, though, was lots of really good conversation, no drama, no, conflict of any kind.
Someone didn't see drama and conflict. Well, that's good to know, Catherine.
Well, I've heard that there might have been a little, but it wasn't a primary feature of the conference.
No,
and I wasn't there when it happened, so so it wasn't part of my slice. I think that the people I spoke to were very felt like they were getting to have meaningful conversations, and it was a meaningful time. And the speakers all seemed happy with what they were able to do. So I felt I fulfilled my mission. But from my personal embodiment, I do always find it a little like I like being in the conversations, right? And so when you're hosting, you're not in the conversation. You're just sort of facilitating, which is fine because somebody needs to, but
right.
I like this. I like talking.
So the hierarchy rears its ugly head. And the bottom line is the person that facilitates the conversation that everyone else gets so much out of is making a sacrifice. Yeah, you think you want to be a leader? Yeah, go right ahead. That's the reason why most leadership fails, because they can't sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't make a sacrifice, you can't lead. You can't be part of the hierarchy. You can't embody that constraint that causes everything to work. And I do want to go over these comments here. So Benjamin Franklin, I'm confused when people say good. Of course, everybody is. This is because I imagine that there is a person who thought he was good his whole life, and suppose everybody around him thought he was good, and then the society retrospectively revises its opinion. Well, who cares? Maybe he killed American soldiers or something. He's certainly bad according to society. No, your opinion doesn't matter. I don't know. I thought that would have been clear by me. No one's opinion matters. How's that? I'll just state it flat out. No one's opinion matters, right? And that actually is what gets you out of that. It's like, but oh no, I'm being judged even though I'm good. Yeah, welcome to my world. I don't know if you saw the drama on Randos United about last week's stream, where effectively, let's be honest, a bunch of lies were told about what happened in the stream. And I was like, what are you doing, bro? Why are you saying what? This is just inaccurate. It's just inaccurate. You know? And Rob knows
more drama I missed out on.
Hello, sir.
Hey, Rob.
Hello, nice to meet you.
It's good that you missed out. Rob, have you met Catherine and Jesse and her?
No, actually.
Well,
hi, Rob.
Meet them now.
Nice to meet you, Jesse and Catherine. I know Catherine from the channel, so I know more about you, Catherine, than you know about me. So sorry.
Uh-oh.
Just, I mean, I'm just joking around.
Leader makes.
I missed the last minute or so because I was getting hooked up here. So I heard you bring up last week. I agree with what's been said so far. The monologue was great.
Thank you.
Hard to disagree with that.
Thank you.
I thought Catherine.
Although, go ahead and find a disagreement.
I'm looking for something to disagree with. I'm like, how can I disagree? But I mean, then I heard Mark talk about last week, so let's continue down that line, Mark, if you wish to.
All right, give me a moment, and we'll do that, and then we can catch people up on the last week drama. So the primacy of beauty said a criticism towards me, Benjamin. No, that's funny. That's funny.
Look, we're all ugly. Some people are more ugly than others.
Sally
There you
Joe,
go.
whining
Problem
hate
solved.
shows you're doing something productive. I agree, Sally. When people whine about you in hatred and anger and resentment, that means you're being productive. You're cleaning your room and they're upset. And that's what I saw for sure. Nathaniel, growing up, I didn't enjoy reading fiction. I don't even believe there is such a thing as fiction. I got to do that video. And I find it difficult to connect with now. Any advice on where a late 30s voracious nonfiction reader should start? Feels like
Don
the poetic
Quixote.
is missing. Look,
Oh,
great
sorry.
books out there, right? I mean, you know, Ender's Game, Snow Crash, really good. Neuromancer, good stuff. Really good stuff. And there's a lot of dangerous stuff around that. And I know Vanderclay's been doing the space trilogy there that Ted was talking about, C.S. Lewis's space trilogy. And then look, Sally Joe's got some helpful Anthem. Oh, Anthem's good.
The fiction book that got me, I was similar to Nathan before. I used to only read nonfiction. Then I read Tolstoy's Death of Ivan Ilyich, and that sparked my nonfiction passion. So
Yeah,
I basically only read nonfiction. I only read fiction now. I was.
It's not fiction, Rob. It's not. There's no such thing as fiction, man. I'm telling you.
Well, it's in the fiction section. Trust me, dude. It's not a biography.
Oh yeah, no. It's an art. It's an invalid category. I'm going to do a video and I can prove that.
Of course. Okay.
Right.
You should explain all of this, Mark. You should
a bad
you should reinterpret
story,
the literary.
No,
industry.
A bad story you don't read. Right. So, and this is Peterson. Like, what's more true, the Epic of Gilgamesh, or like some historical telling of what they did with the, whatever. Right. Dune is true. Right. Space is a Cruel Mistress. Lord of the Rings, obviously. These are good things. Yeah. Because they're not fiction. Like, and I would argue that Tolkien didn't even tell good stories. Like, his stories are terrible. Anthony, I share your dislike of fiction, Nathaniel, but I love poetry as it is, and even and more real and not fantasy usually. Yeah, poetry's great. Japanese manga would have had better bloodletting. No, Japanese manga is evil. Anime is evil. We're gonna go into that for sure at some point.
Start with a shorter story. If you want to get into fiction, go short stories first.
Yes,
like
short stories
100,
are better.
150.
Gulliver's Travels.
And then you'll get into it.
There we go.
Get a good science fiction anthology. They'll be like
Treasure Island. Yeah,
stories.
all my stuff was short stories. Well, look, Call of the Wild. I love Call of the Wild. Huge fan. And White Fang. White Fang is great. Anselman, I have no interest in reading Lewis's fantasies, but appreciate Paul Vanderklay extracting his apologetics from it.
I agree with that. I totally
I'm
agree with that. I'm not
gonna
gonna stop anybody
fan.
from reading it, but I'm not a huge. I'm an oddball. I'm not a big fan of the space trilogy.
No, you're just a little too Catholic for Lewis, which is fine.
His 4 Muppet recommendations in fiction. The troublesome.
Hold on,
Frankenstein.
Richie. Give me a sec.
Although I've not finished this
Big
explains
That's a good one.
precisely what we're up against in so many ways.
It does. It explains AI.
F. Scott
the Great Gatsby.
Fitzgerald's The Great
Hard to
Gatsby.
argue.
If you want to talk about embodiment, this is
I've
someone
always-
embodying obsession.
That's a short one, so don't worry too much.
That's a
about
short
it.
one. It's a good one.
That is a nice short one.
A bit spicy, might be a bit too dry for some people, but Foundation by Isaac Asimov. There's a way to read this that is the culture's embodying ideals over time and how it changes culture. Interesting.
Haven't read
And you can't talk about this man
Cormac
too quickly yet, but gosh,
Border
Cormac McCarthy, the Border Trilogy, including All the Pretty Horses, The Crossing, which is the one I would point to, Seas of the Plain. 3. You were talking about embodiment. There's 3 books about embodiment that are beautiful and hard to read in a romantic.
Don
time.
Quixote.
Yeah.
The problem is that's
Wow.
deliberately
That's a hard
subversive literature, right? So it's a problem.
Well, the whole problem with this conversation is we were talking about embodiment, and now we're talking about reading, which is not embodiment.
Nathaniel brought us into it. So look, the thing that
Shame.
happened with last week's stream is that there was a Randos conversation when last week's stream was mentioned, and all kinds of criticisms and flat out inaccuracies were leveled at the stream, and you could have handled that better. It's like, oh, really, genius? Well, thanks. I got an idea. Why don't you handle it the way you want on your stream, and I'll handle it the way I want on my stream? Because yeah, I can always do everything better. That's not a critique. That's a statement of fact that is true universally. Everything you do, you could do better. Now what? Where are we at? What are we saying? Come on, give helpful feedback or none at all. Like, yeah, it's like mom used to say, right? Don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Yeah, that's not a bad rule. It's not a bad rule. So yeah, the embodiment of that, and I think you can see it in the embodiment. The embodiment was not good. And look, I didn't watch the Jacob Richard thing that happened today. Obviously, I was working, but yeah, I mean, someone said it didn't go well. It went down in flames. I'm not surprised. I could probably tell them why. They wouldn't believe anything that I have to say, which is fine. And they're not going to take advice from me, which is also fine. And I'm probably not going to give them that advice anyway, because I just don't care. Sorry. But, it is what it is. What do you think, Rob? Did you want to?
I'm just trying to triangulate here. So that would mean that you and Jacob are on the same page about something?
I'm not on the same page with Jacob about anything, ever.
Okay. All right. I just wanted
Except Jacob. Look, Jacob's for the good, and he's trying to embody goodness. So I support that. Like, I support that as best as I can. Do I support his just chatting streams? Not necessarily. Certainly not all of them. Do I support his style? No. I think his style sucks. I think he makes inflammatory statements to get attention. And I love Jacob. I think he's great. I'm not asking him to change. I'm fine with everything that he does. I'm very grateful that he has the StreamYard open to me and to the other people that he opens it to. I think that's wonderful, right? I mean, he's trying to build something. And when he's trying to build something and not being critical, I am very supportive. Even if it's something that I don't believe is going to work. Like, I'm skeptical about what he's trying to build. But I'm also not over there telling him, like, well, you should do it this way and you should do that. And no, he should do it the way he wants. If he wants my freaking advice, he'll probably ask for it, probably in private, like a gentleman would. And I may even acquiesce and give him some advice if he asks for it. But I don't think he will, and he certainly doesn't have to. And there's
You're talking about Jacob?
Yeah, Jacob. And there's no ill will there, right? Like, I'm not like, ooh, my expertise is so important, I need to share it with. I don't care. Like, if you don't think I have anything to offer, then whatever I have to offer is valueless. That's fine by me. I really don't care. Like, I'm cool. It's all good. You want your individuality? We'll see how long that lasts. Have it. Do what you want to do. I'm fine with it.
So I did end up watching the replay of you and Jesse's stream with Richard last Friday. I watched it on the replay because I was intrigued by our conversation that we had on like Wednesday or whatever it was, Tuesday,
Yep.
Mark.
The live stream on Randos. Yep.
Yeah. So I went back and looked at it, and maybe I'll try to reach out to Richard and try to keep the communication lines open because I see where he's coming from.
Those communication lines weren't closed.
No,
Where do you think he's coming from?
Well,
it was unclear to me in 3 hours where he was coming.
So
and I'm not trying to be critical.
I'm glad to have you guys here. This is very meta. Post meta.
Please don't use the meta word on navigating that. That's a bad.
Yeah.
It's triple meta.
Come on,
it's
dude.
Triple meta right now.
Come on, you're killing
Allow me to appreciate.
You're killing me.
No, come on. Yes. Now that wow, this is weird for me. So where do I think Richard was coming from? So Richard was in the chat of the conversation that me and Mark had with Teo and who else was in there? There was Sherry was in there on Friday or Wednesday.
Yep.
And so he was there. He was like, yeah, Rob, I support you. I think you're doing good. And what I think our commonality is, me and Richard, is that he sees this whole corner as like this is how I see it. I see it as a bit of a graduate student lounge at a very cool university. Totally not academic, but totally cool, totally fun. We're drinking coffee, and there's a initial aspect of having these conversations where you want to get on the same page as the other people in the room, because you don't want to just be talking past each other. I want to understand what you're saying, and I hope that you can try to understand what I'm saying. And if we can't even establish that, then what's the point of even continuing continuing because we're just going to be talking.
But there is a point.
Past.
There is a point.
Okay, so,
that was my whole point. Is there is a point? Like that was the whole point. Is if you aim low, you're going to get nowhere.
No. It's not aiming low. It's the initial.
Look at what Jesse's doing.
So he's pointing, right? He's pointing at an empty whiteboard. I can do the same.
No, I'm pointing at the frame. How you frame things matters. So there's no picture, there's no story here, but there is a frame. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's just an empty page. There's nothing to be talked about.
It's the same thing as the thing you're pointing at.
No, it's not.
The empty page is the same thing as.
No, it's not the same. Jesse has a frame around it.
Cut it out.
No, that's actually hugely important. That's what embodiment is about. It's about the frame, not the page or the canvas. It's not about the page.
The page is an object itself. This is an object.
No, it's not an object. An empty piece of paper is actually not an object.
A single sheet of paper is an object. Catherine, come on.
This is true.
A single sheet of paper.
This is propositional tyranny. This is propositional tyranny, Mark.
No, a single sheet of paper.
Propositions are tyrannizing.
A page is not. Language matters.
Okay, let's move on. The goal of the initial stage of a friendly graduate student level lounge conversation. We're not in a debate. We're not here to ruin everybody's career. We're just here to have.
Have you been to a lounge at a university?
I've been in the hallway.
Okay, then you know there's lots of debates going on. So please go on.
No, debate is good, but to get to the debate, you first have to spend time.
Debate is not good.
No, debate is good.
No, debate can be good, but it is not good.
It's debate not universal good. Yeah.
Okay, fine. We want agreement. The purpose of debate, the end goal of debate is to achieve a resonance, harmony.
Maybe. That's why I don't do debates, ever. Problem solved. You can talk about debates all day long. I don't engage.
So how do two people with disagreeing? So how do two people with two different ideas of the whole thing? Richard never got to the debate. He was just trying to do the definitions. That's
Richard
what
never got to anything. No, he wasn't trying to do the definitions. He was trying to.
No, he was asking questions. He wanted clarification. That was my trouble. I wanted clarification, and I was having a hard time achieving the clarification because I was called a rebel.
You weren't going to get any clarification. Like all the information that you needed and could possibly have had was there, and it wasn't going to get any better.
Where, when? Where before I got there, or where I had to go back and look at it?
No, I mean, look.
I don't have time. The archives are one thing, but we're face to face. Can't you just give me a paragraph?
Let me answer your question. The thing that you are seeking was not there because there was no goal to make it happen. Now, and this is Richard's problem. Like, oh, you must be here to do X. And I'm like, no, I am not here to do X. He's like, no, you must be here to do X. No, I'm still not here to do X. I'm doing Y. No, you must be. No, I mustn't. And I wasn't. And that's not what was happening. And that's the problem. Like, that was the problem. The frame was wrong. And so, and look, Richard stayed after the live broadcast ended for quite some time and talked to Jesse and I. So all these people,
dish, give me the dish. Tell us.
And no, he was poorly treated. Blah, blah, blah. He stayed. We had a wonderful chat afterwards. In fact, it was far better than the chat when the stream was on, which should tell you a bunch of things. I'm sure Catherine's going like, ding, 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 right from her training. She probably knows exactly what I'm talking about, and she's never heard this story.
If people are saying Richard was treated poorly, and I think this is some of the criticism, I don't agree with that. I think maybe he was hitting something like a wall or something like this, and I think he was in good spirits.
If it was a debate, we debated him, and he lost.
No, it wasn't a debate.
I'm saying if you're going to use that mechanism, you're going to frame or opinions on the matter or your observation conversation through the principle you put forward that we're here to debate, we're here in this lounge to debate this high school thing, then he lost the debate.
Not high school.
Well, doesn't matter.
It's postgraduate at this
high
level.
school. Postgrad.
Come on, give us.
Well, I don't like academics. I'm not an academic. I'm an artist. So.
Well, we'll let you in. Well, maybe it's a Starbucks at Harvard Square. We're at Harvard Square.
You can't.
No,
you can't even.
curse.
Yeah,
Don't
the,
make
key
me
is,
curse.
the key is you can't keep him out. All right, let me catch up on some of these while you ponder what we said and based on what you saw.
I think
I want to get
you
to
can
some
either-
of the comments
okay.
first. So
All right.
Benjamin Franklin, I think maybe the film professor can have a relationship to embodiment. Of course he can, just not with his film. It's not that hard. The director maybe, but not the professor. Sally Joe, Catherine, we could fight windmills. We could. Yes, we could. Catherine, Sally's an artist. Don't believe her. I'm just saying. I love Sally. Don't believe her. Just don't even go there. What else do we have? Richard is a tough nut. Hazelnut. He was, look, I enjoyed talking to Richard. I thought it was great. That was a wonderful exemplification of the topic of, and even afterwards, right? Like, yeah. Uh-oh. Sally Joe's calling me out. Lies, Mark. Jacob and Mark are on the same page like 2 times a week, and they both do things. It's true. Benjamin Franklin. Jacob's dreams are fun if they are talking about some interesting topic. Well, look, interesting to you and interesting to other people vary. So maybe they're all fun, depending upon who you are, right? But a lot of the time, it's just pointless banter, maybe, about nothing, or meta conversations. I hate that word. And that's why, because it's meaningless. About having conversations. Well, yeah. Sally Joe does
It's so meta. It's meta. What's wrong with meta? Come on. Give me a break.
Benjamin Franklin. Shari's story about her talking to God's feet actually made me cry. Well, look, it should have. It made me cry. William
It was a good
Clinton's
story.
My
I was
Patch,
glad
totally distracting. What is going on here? This page is AI generated. Speak up, Herb. I will try to get Herb to speak up. It's hard. We did this last minute. Sally, oh man, it's not a debate though. We are not here for people to win.
Okay.
Exactly.
So, understood. Totally understand.
Rob.
In order to get to agreement or disagreement, you have to first understand what is being said.
No, you don't.
This is what I mean with the initial
don't.
stages.
No,
Yes,
you
you
don't.
do. If you're
you
misunderstanding, you can never achieve agreement if you don't understand what's being said.
No, that's actually not true. Like, I can actually prove to you that that's not true. And that's the problem, is that if everything is only propositions, then yes, you're screwed. And this was Jesse's point. You can frame any conversation as a debate, literally any one. It's not that hard. You might be wrong though, and then where are you? Then you just don't understand the conversation anymore. And that happens to people all the time.
Yes. So
And
okay.
that was
So
the
so
point
wait,
that Richard was making.
pause. Yes. So what happens if you don't understand the conversation or the proposition? If you don't understand,
Just watch the last stream, dude.
no, why can't you provide clarification?
Happened.
You should provide clarification.
Because you watch the embodiment. You watch the communication.
What if
You watch
there's
the
no
words.
amount? What if there's no amount of clarification that can make that person understand? Have you considered?
Well, you don't know.
that might
What
be a
if you don't
possibility?
know? Maybe you could try to use other words,
In that
analogies.
stream-
Tell a story.
that-
I saw Jesse
Oh.
said he's into stories, and maybe you could tell a story
So
that
you're,
would help.
so you're saying we
Je-
didn't tell any stories at all in that stream?
I think Richard could have, if you guys are into story and you like to articulate
Rob,
your meaning
answer the
through
question.
story,
Do-
then
are you
Richard could have
saying-
understood.
Are you
Yes, maybe
saying that
Richard could have
nobody
understood what you're
told any stories in that stream to try and get Richard to understand?
I think you were trying. You were certainly trying.
No.
I forget exactly whether
What
you said a
if
story
no
or not.
one can get Richard to understand? Because that's
He's
possible.
brand new. You don't know him that
I've
well.
met people
He
like
just
that.
got
They're
here.
usually schizophrenics, but
You just
there are
no,
people like
no,
that
no, no,
in
no,
the
no,
world.
no. He's
No,
not schizophrenic.
no,
You don't know
look,
that. That's not a. You can't. That's
No, Rob,
that's ridiculous.
Rob,
You can't.
Rob, I didn't make any.
Isn't
claims
Catherine a-
other than that
isn't
this is
Catherine
the
a
condition that
professional?
exists. But look
You
at what
can't
you're
just
doing.
make that.
But Rob, look
You
at
can't
what
just
you're
make
doing.
that-
You're holding. Be quiet for a second. You're holding me up to a standard that's arbitrary that you think I should meet. And I get it. Like, I'm flattered that you think I can talk to anybody about anything and make them understand framing. But I can't, and I don't want to, and I'm not
You
even
can-
going to try.
the
because
only
that
other
isn't
people
my
you could-
goal. But that's actually what you just did. That was the
No.
frame you just put me in.
No, see, I have a special secret. I'm from Massachusetts. That means I can understand you, Mark. I know what you're saying, and nobody
You
else
can
understands
understand
you
a
except
lot,
me.
that's for sure.
Except the other few people from Massachusetts. Those are the only people that don't know what you're saying. And even I have my doubts sometimes about what you're saying.
That's not true. I can communicate with Sally just fine, and she doesn't even talk right. So There you go.
What it's called a dialogue, right? So there has to be a logos, which has nothing to do with correspondence.
Right.
Which is what you're talking about, Rob. You're talking about correspondence. And even
That's a
in that
proposition.
frame,
That's a proposition.
No. I'm telling you what you just talked about for the last
You're
20
telling
minutes.
You're telling me a proposition.
No, I'm literally stating a fact.
Tell me a story.
Okay, I did. Okay, a story is man in a hole. There's every story that you've ever encountered ever. Man has a problem. Man has a question. Man in the plural. It is no, literally. Is that like literally every story has embedded questions in them, and depending on the complexity of that question, is the richest of the story. Even Extraction 2, it has questions underneath it. Is my father's son? Like that? It literally like that's. It's one of the questions within that Chris Hemsworth film. Like even dumb action movies have embedded questions.
Right.
But that doesn't add to the complexity or the richness of the story.
So I will admit, I did not watch the last stream, so I feel a little bit like
you don't need to.
Either if we're gonna keep talking about the last stream, I might dip, or we could talk about embodiment, and I'm here for that. But I feel like I'm very
let's talk about
in this
embodiment.
conversation.
Yeah, let's talk about embodiment. But I want to catch up on these things. So, William, white cow and blizzard, greatest art of all time. No, it's polar bear. Polar bear is better than white cow. I'm telling you, William, you just haven't experienced art until it's the polar bear, not the cow. We have to debate about the true nature debates. No, we don't. That's self-referential stuff. Anytime you self-reference, it's wrong. It's automatically self-reference, paradox, contradiction, wrong, bad way to think about it, limit of your frame. Sally Joe, apparently there weren't rules for the game no one is playing. That's what stood out to me. Just chatting stream should be, okay, I like that statement. That's your rule for your stream. This isn't a just chatting stream. And you knew that unless you didn't watch it. Or maybe you watched the stream and you didn't hear the rules, which I state in every stream, because this stream is embodied. And the body is that we're here to talk about the topic that starts with the monologue, although we don't have to stay there. Right? Those are the rules for this engagement. And it's always stated, it's always known, it's not a just chatting stream. Putting me in the frame of just chatting stream is unfair. And making up rules for this little corner and what it is and isn't is fine, but then I'm out. The minute you guys make any rules, I'm out.
Let's ask Catherine about embodiment. Catherine, how do you best embody things?
Hold on. We've got to give her credentials first.
Like people. No.
We've got to give Catherine's credentials because they're super important. Catherine is a body that has created other bodies. So if anybody knows about embodiment, Catherine is it. Go ahead, Catherine. Tell us about embodiment.
Ultimate embodiment.
I like being at the top of a hierarchy. This is fun. Well, one of the things I was thinking while you were doing your monologue, Mark, was I was thinking about how for us to be like as humans, you were really emphasizing the way that we have foundational knowledge through embodiment that we can't even articulate, which I don't disagree with. But so often we need it's sort of like these things are kind of like patterned and cyclical, right? Where you have to embody the thing, but then you need to be able to articulate the thing to be able to then move on to a new phase of embodying the thing in a new way. Now that's not the only way that could happen. You could also watch somebody else changing what they're doing and you just follow along and change that. But often what we do is we embody a thing and then we ruminate on it and we process what we've been embodying. And so we try to figure out what we've been doing. And often, to your point that we don't have to be able to say what we're doing, we can't articulate what we're doing. We come close and we come up with an explanation of what we've been doing. And whether or not it's accurate kind of doesn't matter. It just has to be accurate enough that we can find a way that we could maybe embody that thing slightly better. And so I think acknowledging the fact that embodiment patterned with rumination and integrating that with the other ways of knowing can bring us to new levels of embodiment that are more in line with our ideals.
I like that. See, this is why we need you in on the live stream action, because we actually picked this topic way in advance, right? We had it last Friday. That's way in advance for us. and this is the point about the cyclical stuff.
Yeah.
Although
wow.
I could argue that adding in the cyclicality can come later, but it's good that you brought it up. And I mean, who better than a body that has created other bodies to and is in touch with nature to a degree that none of us will ever be.
Well, isn't this connected though? Why, Catherine, when she first came on, said, why do we need to talk about embodiment? Well, because we moved away from any conception of what femininity is. We could say it that.
Well,
we can
and
say,
we've been sucked in.
Yes,
we've been
to the Black
sucked
Mirror.
away from our bodies. And again, look, I mean, go ahead, text me. I'm not going to see it. Like you can control that. You can control how much time you spend playing video games. You can, and if you can't, you've got to put yourself in a situation where you can, right? Because that's a thing too. And maybe that's surrounding yourself with people who won't let you, who will constrain you, because we all need external constraints, even from other people. And that sucks if you're rebellious. But if you realize your better self lies with your interaction with others, then maybe it's okay again. And yeah, I like that you brought that up, Catherine. So thank you. This is why we need you in on these little things, so that
I'll try to show up more. The other thing I was thinking, Mark, is the way that I was just thinking about the way that embodiment is integral, not just to how we understand ourselves, but to all of our emotions. Like the only way that I mean, I'm sure you guys know, but the way that you experience an emotion is you have a cascade of physiological things that happen throughout your body, and then your brain interprets that as an emotion, and then you figure out what you're feeling. So the physiological happens first, then the assessment of the physiological, then you scan to figure out why the heck your body did that thing. So you have those emotions, but then when you watch somebody or you listen to a story, the way that you understand how they feel is you map those onto yourself. So your mirror on neurons have the cascade of what they would have in that situation, and that's how you can have empathy. And so the fact that as a society we have become so disembodied and we aren't outside, I mean, how many people listening to this will swim out in a random lake somewhere or the ocean? Like, who's going to do that? Hopefully some people, but that would have been everybody in the past. Everybody who had access to water would be in water, right? Who's going to go and wrestle somebody? Not, maybe some of us, not a lot of us. So there's all these ways that historically we have been embodied for thousands of years as creatures, and we don't embody ourselves in those ways anymore. And so our ability then to understand other people and to understand ourselves through that is seriously limited. And I think it contributes to the distance and the intimacy crisis.
Yes. Well, I like how you looped that in, obviously. That was brilliant, as always.
The danger is...
yeah, when we're not intimate with the world, right? We don't learn how to be intimate with ourselves and with others. And then we're in a constant rebellion against ourselves. And then we get into these loops where we're like, no, I want this way. And then you get it that way. And you're like, no, this isn't what I want at all. And it's, you see people do that and they totally break down, and they, it's a serious problem, right? Like, I mean, I know it's funny, but it's also a very serious problem. I see people do this all the time, and they're stuck in these conflicts. And I did want to loop in these comments. So are debates verbal wrestling match over who controls the frame? No, some can be. Like, if you're a postmodern power from above narrative person, you're screwed. Ethan has a question for Catherine. Which conference was better, and why was it? And why was it? I should have known. It's Ethan, and I wasn't quick enough. But yeah,
it was because I got to hang out with you in Thunder Bay, Ethan. Obviously, that's the answer.
She's not going to take a stance on that. And if she did, she's biased. Thunder Bay was her conference. So
I know. I am biased. It's not fair.
That's okay. I appreciate his framing, because I thought that was brilliant. And that's a good example of framing, right? It's a good example. It's an obvious and amusing example of framing. But framing is important. Sally Joe, he says agreement, but it means I order to dominate this conversation. Icky, yeah, well, that happened. Nathaniel, weeks ago, I had a question about framing on this channel, and it helped a ton when you told me to watch a bunch of earlier videos. I'm glad to hear that. That makes all this work worthwhile. Thank you. Maybe there should be a few participants to check out first. Yeah, maybe. You know, one of
We
these
could create a
days.
playlist. We could do a playlist.
We have one. I gotta do more playlists. I
I
gotta,
know.
yeah.
Could
I do
redo the
so
intro
much work
video
to do.
too.
And I just, yeah, I can't listen to my own videos. It's really hard. If anyone's ever done it, I listen to all of them because after they're edited, I'm the one that goes in and puts in the cards and just writes the description and gets the tags. And that's a very long process for me. And yeah, it's, and I mean, it's not like, 30-minute video. It probably takes me 40 minutes, but
Yeah.
it's a long process. And then I do a thumbnail. Most of the thumbnails are mine. A few of them are other people. Sally, of course, has done some thumbnails, right?
Yeah.
And Sally, if you don't understand, you just have to participate. Exactly. That's the point of embodiment, right? That's the point of getting a meal together, right? I'm going to skip Spatch's question because it's silly. Here we go.
The other thing to oh gosh.
I think this stream has a subliminal product placement for Herb Alt. Ah, yes. That is exactly. So I'm thinking AI. And Catherine's here. Catherine and I need to do a talk on AI because we've been. Oh, there we go. Spatch is disparaging Rob by saying he's from Arkham, Mass.
No, that's I've actually. We are both from home. Our hometown is Arkham. Mark.
There you go.
We're both from the same town.
We are both from Arkham, Mass. Only the H.P. Lovecraft fans will get it. Man in a Hall, starring Liam Neeson. Can confirm. And confirm.
Seriously.
Sally, once upon a time, a frog king was like, "Dine with me, peasants," and I was like, "Sorry, bro, but I don't eat flies." Can confirm, Sally. I hope you are okay with my embellishment. You don't sound anything like that. Anselman, man digging a hole, sung by Bernard Cribbins. Nice. Richard in a hole kept digging deeper. Well, yeah, there's always that. Benjamin Franklin, I'm embodying the spirit of YouTube stream chatter as we speak. Well, I hope there is such a thing. I'd rather you embody the higher spirit of being together, having fun, and discussing these important sort of issues. Anselman, I like the word rumination, which uses the word for chewing to represent a mental process as sort of embodiment. Look, I only bring it up because Mathieu Peugeot, my wonderful kind of virtual friend now, since he promoted my channel and got me way over 1,000 subs in 2.5 weeks, mentioned it on Twitter. And I've been like, oh, that's such a good word. That's such a good concept. That's the difference between, we'll say, the meditation of Sam Harris, which is solipsistic and sort of leads to narcissism, in my opinion, and what you should be doing. The contemplative side, we'll say, meditation is a slippery word because we equivocate on the word quite a bit, which is ironic that Vervaeke uses it and equivocates on it too. But equivocation's hard. Like, you're going to run into it. Benjamin Franklin, Anselman, have you heard the song Depth of My Ego by Matt McGinn? Nope. Anselman doesn't like. Oh, he does like Matt McGinn. Okay, he's going to check it out. Rob, what is this? Can we embody anything with first having an idea or emotion to embody? Yeah, I think we can. Look, embodiment's all about getting in tune with the spirit, right? And so what is the spirit? What is your final cause, your telos? Like, what is all that? That's what you're trying to embody. And like Herb is, a straight white cis male. So that's what he embodies. And, down there in DC, where he's from, that's his shtick. Like that's his telos. That's what.
So
he's
I guess the question I was asking is there a prerequisite for embodiment in terms of the ephemeral or idea space?
You're here.
Well, we have to embody something.
No.
You mean like in general or like right now?
I mean in general, but
in general, yeah.
Right now would have to be included necessarily, but I mean in general.
Well, you include yourself to the extent that you can, and then either you're rejected because you're not in the spirit, right? Or you're accepted and you're allowed to continue.
I think there is a prerequisite. I think that to be embodied requires some conscious participation with it. Like if you're unconscious, you're not embodied because you're not participating within that space, right? So when somebody's dead, their body's still here, but they're not embodying anything, except their body would be embodying corpsehood. But I do think there has to be conscious engagement, which is why I think we can end up with sort of split selves when we are embodied. Like right now, I look around my room, which is where I'm actually embodied, but all of my conscious engagement is in this tiny little 4-inch screen because I'm using my phone because my laptop wasn't working. So all of my conscious embodiment is with people really far away, but my physical embodiment is here. And so I do think that the prerequisite is conscious engagement, which can be really, really hard if you are consciously engaged elsewhere.
And so I would say yes to this question for myself. I'd be interested in hearing what you guys think, but are we disembodied where we actually are in our rooms? Are we disembodied in our rooms and participating embodiment virtually somewhere else
Why
in between?
wouldn't you say?
I don't.
I feel like I'm disembodied. I feel like my body.
Yeah.
I feel like my intellect is with all of you guys. Like I'm disembodied here. Like
Yeah,
kind of what Catherine was kind of saying.
Catherine, why can't
maybe
you
she should clarify.
Why can't you embody unconscious ideas or principles or others' ideas and principles? Yeah,
you can, but you just have to be conscious to do that.
You have to be a conscious.
I mean like literally your brain is awake. You can unconsciously manifest things, and you can manifest things that are unconscious aspects, but you have to have a consciousness involved. I think that's a very, very basic, like minimal requirement.
The prerequisite for embodiment is agency, right? And Sally, some people embody in their bodies, and some people embody ideologies with their bodies.
So what do we do with depression then?
Agency over consciousness. Yeah.
Because depression is the lack of agency, but it's also disembodied. It's also a subconscious.
Well, depression's complicated because depression is a symptom that is a similar symptom for many different causes, right?
Right.
So sometimes you're depressed because your body is super sick. And so you have like this physical manifestation, which is the experience of depression. Sometimes you're depressed because you have a problem you don't know how to solve, and so you're stuck. Sometimes you're depressed because you're angry. Like there's lots of reasons why people feel depressed. But you at that time are embodied, but you have an experience of embodiment that's one of distance and separation. So it's a very specific type.
That would be unconscious. That would be unconscious. That would be unconscious by nature.
Why would it be unconscious?
You would not be. You can when you're in the state of depression, you are not conscious. You're not aware of all the manifest or phenomena around you.
Yeah, I'm not using the word psychologically. I'm using it biologically, though.
Right.
Does that track? Because I agree with you. I agree with you if we use the word in a psychological frame instead of a biological frame.
Right.
Yeah, well, I think again, Ethan, I prefer the word agency over conscious, right? And Sally Joe, my sock slips down inside my boot, right? And I think that we're not only embodied in one thing, right? So I have my body.
I don't know. I'm going to disagree with the agency thing.
You're going to disagree with the agency thing? Okay.
Yeah. Because like if I'm a slave, let's say I'm like some horror movie, right? Like you're tied up, gagged, you have no control over anything, you have no agency. The only agency you have is maybe the attitude you bring to it and what you think about it. But you don't have any physical agency at all.
Physical agency, yes.
But you're still embodied, right?
Right.
But if they knock you out and drug you,
we're not materialists.
Now you're not embodying.
Yeah, we're not materialists. There's no such thing as merely physical agency. Like agency can't be reduced to material.
Yeah.
Right. You still control whether or not you live or die, for example. Like because you can.
But you are within and experience your body as long as you are physically conscious. And I think that's the only prerequisite for embodiment.
Yeah, that's fair. But it's not single embodiment. Like I am still part of the body that is the live stream. At the same time, that I am physically in my body. And this is where people
Yeah.
run into problems. They over reduce everything. Like they want one identity. It's like, you're not going to have one identity. You never had one identity. And your identity is going to change over time. And nobody likes that answer because it's complex and they want a simple answer. But you know what? The world you were born into is complex. And that's the problem.
We lost Jesse and I was going back and forth. There's Jesse. So what did you think of my answer? Because I felt like we were not tracking. There was some.
I would like to refer to embodiment regarding framing. It's something that you're in the moment that you are in. It's you have to afford participation in some way. There's this sense that there are always push-pull tendencies in life, and so what embodiment does is it gives you a locality within what's happening around you.
Mm-hmm.
But you can be, I guess, psychologically unconscious in that moment as well, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily know all the words in the sequence that I'm going to tell you, but I have an insight or intuition that I'm following, and a communication that I'm trying to give to you.
Mm-hmm.
But the sanity or the intellect of that is not necessarily in me. It's in something else. It's in the dialogue.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I was trying to answer the question of what prerequisites there are, but I don't think that consciousness is embodiment. I think that what you described is a good description of embodiment. But the only prerequisite I can think of to achieve what you described is
Presence.
you have to be conscious.
I would say
But
presence.
then, sure.
Because
Sure.
things can be embodied. Like, a film can be embodiment of ideals, which is one thing I've been pointing to. Story is we start like these are the
Wait. Now I have a question. Do we need a body? Does something need a body to be embodied?
Everything needs a body. Well, an embodiment extends beyond consciousness. I would say that's right. But I mean, that's the purpose of embodiment.
principles and principalities.
Place to go.
Okay.
Right. Well,
Principles
and I want to address Sally. You can notice your physical and online convo with split bandwidth. Right. Exactly. It's not a singular thing. It's not like either I'm all here or I'm all there. That's
well, I would like maybe Catherine knows about the cocktail party experiments in psychology, where your attention can only really be focused in one direction.
That's a lie.
Does this ring a bell? These experiments, Catherine, about the it's called
So
the cocktail party effect.
I'm curious what Mark is going to say because what I was taught was that you can move attention very quickly, but you can't actually maintain attention in one place. But it just shifts so rapidly that you think that it's in more than one place.
It's how you drive a car properly.
That's
literally, because you're not paying attention to the foot on the pedal. You're not paying attention to your hands
except
on the
that
wheel.
there's no way that that's what's happening. Like there's absolutely no way that's what's happening, right? Because you can drive a car, and while you're driving a car, you can have insights. And therefore, like it really is that, like the proof is that simple.
Well,
and you can say,
so driving a car.
Well, hold on.
It's not the driving a car test. It's not the driving a car test. It's the cocktail party test.
Yeah,
so there's a distinction.
I can participate in two conversations and listen to a third at the same time, and I can still do it.
The test says you can't.
No, I know the test says you can't. The test is wrong. That's my whole point. If you look at methodology,
it's always replicatable. Even in AI. If you guys talk about AI, this is a good area to bring up about attention and how to mimic human consciousness.
Of course, AI does that. AI is based on that model. Of course, it does. They made it that way.
Right, but they try to get AI to hear like it's white noise, basically.
That's a mistake. AI was designed single-threaded. It actually was. It was designed.
I think human consciousness is single-threaded. The studies show that it is single-threaded.
You cannot prove that. It is not a provable thing, and I can show you that it's not relevant because you can drive down the street, have no
it's not the driving a car test.
Home,
it's not
have an insight.
No, it's not the driving a car test.
No,
It's
it
not
doesn't
the driving
matter.
car test. It's the
Look,
cocktail
I
party
just told
test.
you the cocktail party, I can still do 3 conversations. Two
No,
that
you
I
can't.
participated in 1
No,
hour.
you can't.
No,
It's
I've
about the conversations
actually done
happen.
it. People have watched me do it. People
No,
have gone,
you can.
how did
You
you
can.
do that?
You can
And I went,
switch. You can
I wrote.
switch. You can
Rob,
switch,
No.
but you
In
can't.
this
You
There's
cocktail
can't
no
party-
way for
distinguish.
them to know that. There's literally
Catherine
no
knows what
way
I'm
for
talking
them to know
about.
that.
Catherine,
Nope.
I'm deferring to
Rob,
Catherine here.
okay,
She's the
In this
professional.
cocktail party,
Catherine, is there
Rob,
an actual way to measure something like that?
In the most hard scientific way, no.
It's all an
in this
assumption
cocktail
about how
party,
you work.
But
could
I
have
wanna-
Chinese
go ahead,
whispers
Jesse.
going on. So the whole point of Chinese whispers is the information gets communicated across, and the embodiment of the information slowly loses its frame over time. So you can believe that you're in this cocktail party and be tracking the information, but really what could be happening is the Chinese whispers is happening to you. Like the information is not correctly, or there's a decay effect essentially. There's a feedback.
So I'll just describe the very basic. It's been adjusted, developed.
I think-
Every
I
year
think we
there's
all-
new tests
I think
on
we
this.
all know it, but that's not the
Then
point.
say it. Then
Rob.
tell us what the
point
test is.
that
Tell us what
they
the test
can't
is.
Make that claim. Like it's
So here's
not
the
a-
test.
It's not a
So here's the
credible
test.
claim.
So humans are much more able to distinguish the language being communicated in. So the first part of the test is they just get the audio. They're blindfolded. They just get the audio of a cocktail party. It's just chatter, chatter, chatter. You can't make anything out if you're blindfolded. Then they take the blindfolds off, and suddenly the success rate of understanding what the person over there, those 2 people in the cocktail party are saying, goes way up. You can understand what they're saying with your eyesight. So it's a matter when it comes to AI, they're trying to develop the ability simply for AI to hear the audio of white noise, conversational and stuff. And it's a very tricky thing to do with AI.
Of course
because
it
you
is,
think-
because
because you-
AI is based on these models.
No,
Like,
no,
you're
no,
doing
no.
this all
It's based
backward.
on empirical. It's based. So AI should be able to distinguish each conversation in a white noise conversation. If it's
And it
100
can't.
people talking, and it can't.
Right. It's
Because
based on a
it demonstrates
model of the brain.
it demonstrates the complexity of people understanding the visual cues. But it's so clear once you get the visual cues, and it's no longer white noise. It makes perfect sense almost to this level. It's been tested over and over. There's
Is it
multiple
white
iterations of
noise?
this
No,
test.
no. Look.
It's white noise when you're blindfolded.
Look, I've read those damn studies. There's so many methodological problems with them, but let me give you the
Cut it
big
out,
one.
come
The big
on.
one is these idiots don't understand framing. So the bottom line is that if you do something like, let's suppose you do the dishes while you're listening to some, not Peterson, well, maybe Peterson, not Vervaeke, but some, say, normal class material, okay? If you move, if you're engaging in something physical but repetitive while you're taking in that audio information, it goes into your brain better. Well, why the hell is that? Those things aren't related. In fact, they're anti-correlated. Why is that? Well, it's because actually the reason why it gets quiet is because your brain is able to focus when it has less to focus on. And the way that actually works is you have a cognitive load. Your cognitive load is, say, 12 all the time, right? When you reduce your cognitive load ability by doing the dishes and you drop it to an 8, and now you do something else, now your brain isn't trying to make 70,000 connections with the audio, and you actually learn better. And that is also in the literature, and that contradicts all of the conclusions of the cocktail study. All of them are wrong. They're
But with the
contradicted
cocktail
by
study
better
isn't a
experiments
12.
that
The
aren't
cocktail
about
study,
the same thing.
the cocktail party test in the related field of tests related. It's not just one. It's the whole series of tests. They never stop doing this stuff. It's not a 12. It's like a 50, 60, 100. It's your brain is overloaded. That's the whole point of the test.
No, your
You
brain
can't
is
make
not
sense.
overloaded.
Yes,
your
it
brain
is.
is over.
It's overloaded with separate conversation.
I'm gonna say goodbye. This is really fun, guys.
All right, Kevin. Thank you for showing up. Give us a
Jesse,
Sorry,
parting
we-
thought on Embodiment.
I think that
We got two guys from Massachusetts having it out here. Sorry, Catherine,
it's
you got to
okay.
be part of it.
It's okay. It's been fun. I've enjoyed. I think that where we dropped off with the embodiment stuff, part of where that was breaking down is I think that we probably have slightly different definitions of what we mean by embodiment. Because I would say like a book embodying something else is very different than if you're embodied. So I think that we could have a lot more conversation about what a useful, most helpful definition of embodiment would be, and that would be super fun. I thought that was a great monologue, and the dialogue has been super fun. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Nice meeting you, Catherine.
Lovely to meet
you. Yeah, you too.
Sorry. All right. I'll dial it down a notch.
Again,
I don't want to fight. Yeah, I don't want to chase people.
One set of very specific tests trying to do one thing, and they will always tell you that one thing because you're taking them out of a context, right? But then you can look at these other tests that actually contradict those first set of tests. And in science, this happens all the time, particularly in psychology.
I understand.
For various very good, well-known, well-discussed reasons. Peterson talks about it, right? And so that's the issue, is that the ability for you to make connections. Let's suppose you're a crazy artist like Jesse. You will make all kinds of crazy connections. And maybe most of them will be wrong, but you'll be able to self-correct because Jesse and Sally can, right? And find really good connections. But maybe you won't. Like maybe you're more like Grim Grizz, who finds conspiracies everywhere instead, right? Because he's over-connecting the world. Why? Because he's not embodied, because he's not doing ritual, because he doesn't have anything to calm his mind down enough to focus it in, because the potential in the affordance is too high. When your affordance potential is too high, you end up schizophrenic. That's technically what happens. And that's why taking psychedelics is dangerous, because it overconnects your brain. And maybe you don't need an overconnected brain. Maybe you need actually some marijuana to calm your brain down, because people self-treat anxiety with marijuana all the time. I don't recommend either tactic, by the way, but that happens. I've seen it.
All right, we'll have to come back. I think
Rob,
your argument is congruent with the finding.
That people can understand dialogue, right? But the logos has to be kind of obvious or manifest or like intentionally perceived in order for it to be like received back from you, right? It's a dear logos. So in this white noise test, and if you find the different conversations happening in the room, you have to identify the logos of all those conversations as it happens in time.
This is
and
exactly
AI can't
right.
do that.
Yes.
What do you prioritize?
Yes. This is all congruent. This is why I bring it up.
Right.
No.
You need to be embodied.
No, you need the.
It's disembodied. You can't, even with eyesight. You can actually do it with just your ears. That's why you have audio technicians. Like literally, there's a whole field of psychological warfare too about just noise, like pure noise, blasting noise at just voice speaking, how people speak, and the intonations in their voice.
I think these tests are more congruent with your guys' thoughts.
That. Like I've been talking about.
I think you'll find. I'll give some information to you during the week.
Look, Rob, the tests are perfectly congruent with my thesis, because I read the damn test and said, oh, I see the methodological errors that they made in this test. And oh, here's a bunch of other information that tells you more about what's going on and what's actually going on.
The frame is I agree. The frame is important. I agree. But and
that's what embodiment is all about. It's about knowing a good frame from a bad frame. How do you know what's good and evil? You know it from the frame. You don't know it from the words. Anybody can say, oh, I care about the poor people, and then murder all the poor people. Like, that's not a problem. People do that all the time. It happens constantly. But look, I want to cover some comments here, because Sally's got some good stuff to say.
And
which is more embodied? The guy with a plumber's license, or the guy not licensed at all that fixed your sewer drain? Sally, that sounds weird. Where'd you come up with that? That sounds random. Which is a more embodied plumber? A licensed plumber or an unlicensed guy who fixed your plumbing? Right.
That's a challenging one. Do you guys go to 9 o'clock, or what time? I'm probably going to dip out in a little bit. How long do you go?
We go until the spirit of the conversation leads us to either cut it off and do an after party, or continue way too long in the case of last week.
Well, I was taking the hint that maybe we're losing part of the audience with me.
I don't think so, Rob. I think
Catherine.
It's fine. We didn't lose Catherine.
True. I would say so. But that's
all we wanted was Catherine to show up and give us her words of wisdom, and she.
I just wanted her to help me out more. She knew, because she
No, her job is not to help. You don't. No. You can't require that from anyone. There's no.
Yeah,
speaking
she's
science
not
here.
here to
I
help
disagree with
people
Mark.
out. That's not the purpose.
In this particular field of study, she might have been able to.
You noticed she wouldn't rush to your rescue.
She did initially.
I disagree.
She wanted to stay on the actual topic. So you can even segment, or if you want to keep talking about your white noise example, which is hilarious because it's another hallucination. You can segment audio.
No, it's not. It's a well-studied field.
He's an audio engineer, dude. Careful.
So what?
You can literally segment audio and refine it down into audible means. Like you can
Okay.
do it with
All right. I'm gonna dip out at 9:00. I'll send some more information. I think there's a good thread to pursue for next week or the week after. Whatever.
Okay. I will show you all the flaws in the methodology of those studies.
Great, because I think it's still relevant. I think it's relevant with AI. I think it's relevant with like attention.
It's not relevant with it. You get Rob. All of AI is based on all of those psychological studies. So yes, AI is going to have all the limitations that it was built with. That is true. That's why it's purely parasitic, because it was built on a bunch of false assumptions that we know are wrong about the brain. And that's why when people go, oh, we can understand ourselves better by understanding AI, I'm like, that is such backward, stupid thinking that honestly, you need help. Like you actually need help. AI is based on a brain model.
Tell us a story,
you are not,
Rob.
and the brain model is wrong. And you are not going to understand the brain better by an imperfect, wrong model of the brain.
Sally Joe wanted me to tell a story, so I'll finish on a story. Give me a minute to not a minute, but give me a.
Tell us your story, Rob. Stop trying to win.
Tell us your story. Tell me your story.
Your story, literally your story.
Rob Cahote from New England.
Not Call of the Wild.
No, stories. I think.
How did you get here today? How did I get here today? Yeah.
I met Mark. Me and Mark went to high school actually. And he said, why don't you come on the stream? No, that's humor. That's not a story. That's an attempt at humor, but it's
an attempt at humor. I know. Emphasis on the word attempt. Try again. Why don't you tell us your story as Sally?
Oh yeah. Well, my story is PVK extracted my story from me with his
magic.
With his magic. He enchanted me. And so you can go find it on the Paul Vanderklay channel. Actually, enchantment comes up a lot in Don Quixote.
I bet it does.
So the reason why I think Don Quixote is a good story and relevant and it should be brought up more is because this guy, he listened to a lot of podcasts, the equivalent of podcasts in his day, and it drove him insane. And he wanted to save the world.
Yep.
He wanted to right the wrongs. He wanted to slay giants.
Sounds like the internet.
There's a lot of overlap here.
Yep.
And I think this book is seriously undervalued in correlation to what this little corner is even up to. I think there's a lot of romanticism in this corner.
We're still rejecting this corner frame, but yes, I don't disagree with anything you've said.
I think Don Quixote is a cool guy, even though he's wrong. He's delusional at times. He's very eloquent. He's a very fun guy. I would like to be his friend, even though he's probably crazy.
There's lots of crazy people, Rob.
Something fun about him. So, Sally Joe, I'll tell you a story another time. But
thank you, Rob. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for letting me on. Sorry for getting all Massachusetts on everybody, but Mark can handle it. Okay, see you later.
We're not here to debate. There's no debates.
No debates. No debates.
This is ridiculous.
Whoops.
What was it? Why do we have Herb? What's with this?
What do you mean? Why Herb? Isn't that wonderful? We have
Herb.
It's wonderful.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure.
There's something you love. Awesome.
Or something.
Dream the Impossible Dream. Man of La Mancha. Yeah, I saw Man of La Mancha. It's quite good. Saw the play. It's quite good. Actually, it's quite good. Amateur play, but wow. It's quite the play. On the Cape, no less. I was on Cape Cod with my buddy. Head of the railroad. His name was his name John Kennedy even? I think it was. Anyways, last name was Kennedy for sure. Interesting guy. Wonderful performance. Absolutely wonderful. Little tiny theater on Cape Cod. Nobody didn't even know it was there. Quite the embodiment. I don't know, Elizabeth, really? Like, you think
Embodiment.
Don Quixote is the best? I mean,
Elizabeth.
Nah.
I don't know, Elizabeth. Is Don Quixote the best? I am a knight errant. Rob fails to appreciate irrationality. Look, there's an episode of Babylon 5, which is a great sci-fi series, one of the best. And in the episode, a guy comes to the space station. Okay, follow me here. Comes to the space station by the crossroads where the magical Einstein-Rosen bridges are, and he's looking for the Holy Grail, and he's like dressed like a medieval knight, kind of like in the whatever, and everyone's kind of like, yeah, whatever, dude, except the Minbari. And the Minbari are like, you are an honored guest. We will give you whatever you want. And they're like, what the hell are you doing? And like the Minbari are giving him like all kinds of resources and people and help. And the commander, who's from Earth, is like, what is going on here? Like, he's a nutbag. He's searching for the Holy Grail. And she explains he's a true seeker. And we value true seekers. And it's like, yes. And that, I would argue, is the proper retelling of Don Quixote. Because they're not concerned with the goal. They're not concerned with the search for the Holy Grail. The Minbari are concerned with his telos, which is that of a true seeker. Not a truth seeker, which is different. A true seeker. He is embodying an ethos, and they don't know, is it right? Is it wrong? You could go back to Peterson. Where is the Holy Grail? It's in the darkest part of the forest. What does that mean? Is it a physical object? Or is the quest for the Holy Grail always successful if you see it through to the end? That's interesting to ponder. That's embodiment. That's embodiment right there. You're embodying, seeking the true, right? And I would argue, hopefully, the good and the beautiful. And that is important. That level of embodiment is important. Anselman, could we get him to attack and destroy some useless wind turbines? Oh, man, dude. I saw your useless wind turbines in Scotland. I was crying. It was very sad. It was very sad. William Branch. Yes, my kind of. I can't remember which episode that was, by the way. It's been too long. I need to rewatch Babylon 5, clearly. I do prefer Crusade, which Crusade is just great, even though it's a half a season. Probably the best half a season ever. It's better than Serenity, for sure. Yeah, and I liked the Serenity stuff, but nah, it wasn't as good as Crusade. Crusade was really good. There's lots of little things in Crusade too that are just fantastic, like the dragon episode with the golden dragon. Fantastic stuff. I've said it before, right? Modern sci-fi is the same as ancient Greek philosophy. And back to the point of embodiment, true philosophy for Plato and Aristotle was wrestling. They spent time in the gym wrestling, and that was actually really important to them. And there's a reason for that. And we should be wrestling. We should be struggling. So I had this tweet. I got to pull it up because my brain is just not as on top as it should be. But I will grab my post because I thought my post was quite nice. Life should always be a beautiful struggle with the true towards the good. That's what life should be. And it's the struggle, the embodiment, and the attempt to embody the true and the beautiful and the good. That's what makes a good life. And the goal is not happiness. The goal you're trying to embody is contentedness. And if you are content, that makes room for the happiness to appear. And then you should feel fortunate. And then you should go back to being contented. It's one of the things that the Stoics, or at least modern Stoicism, gets wrong. I don't know if the Stoics got it wrong. That would be unfair. But the modern Stoics certainly get that wrong. And that's the problem, is that when we don't pay attention to the proper aspect of embodiment, we fail in important ways. And that's why embodiment was the topic. And I don't know what the next topic is going to be, but we have some ideas. There's Jesse. Uh-oh. You're muted, Jesse. William. Oh, wrestling. Yes. We wrestle with ideas here. There he is. Welcome back. Did you hear my additional mini monologue on
We wrestle with? Well, of course I didn't. Of course I didn't. I was in the other room. I was embodying the other room.
Well, I don't know. I can hear everything said. When I go in the other room,
where I would go with embodiment.
I got speakers so I can hear things. So here we go. Now we got it. Elizabeth, welcome.
Hey, hey.
Nice to see you.
Mini monologue.
You were great. It was absolutely brilliant. It was brilliant. Yeah.
Of course I didn't.
I think you got that other tab open, Elizabeth, as always.
Oh, wait. Just a sec.
Oh, Ethan's happy to see you, as always. Ethan's all excited. Here we go. Now we got it. Elizabeth, welcome.
Hey. Which one do I close? Which way? Absolutely brilliant.
The YouTube one. The one that says YouTube. Well, no, not that one. Well, hopefully she'll be right back. She closed the wrong tab. That's the problem. Don't close the StreamYard tab. Close the YouTube tab. I usually keep them side by side, and then the minute I click in, I kill the other tab right away. And sometimes I slip up, but that happens. Perfection is not yet mine. That is always the problem with these things. You know what it was, Ethan? Your enthusiasm to see her caused her to get nervous and click on the wrong tab. So I'm going to blame Ethan for Elizabeth's absence. What do you think, Jesse? Can we blame Ethan? Now Jesse's frozen and muted. You're muted in unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. Audio issues because StreamYard is not friendly to proper technology.
Oh, now Ethan's sad because his friend is gone. Anselman, good night. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope Elizabeth comes back. I don't know what happened. Close one wrong tab and boom, the whole world goes away. But I'm glad that she liked my monologue. What did you think of my monologue, Jesse? Did you like it? Was it good?
Very, yeah. There's a lot of thoughts there. It's like 40 minutes. You went for 40 minutes. So there's a lot of thoughts there. Man, kind of.
Well, I think I'm getting shorter, but more concise. I'm packing more in because I used to do like 100.
I was thinking that with the monologues for these streams.
Here's Elizabeth. She's back. Excellent.
I was thinking that with the monologues for these streams. Oh, hello.
Okay, which one do I close?
The YouTube one. Here's Elizabeth. She's back.
Is that it?
I don't know. Is that it?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was great. You know what's happening? Well, just this is what I think. People are emotionally scarred, I should say. This isn't about what this is all nonsense. I don't understand that you're having a conversation about what is and why is there all this other nonsense. It's like the overcompassionate mother happening everywhere. It's scary. I can't believe it. It's just like I don't understand. Yeah,
do you want to point to specific or more concrete instances?
Well, because
what you're saying.
Well, no, because we're not we're not emotional jelly beans. Like that's not who we are. And our society, our world has taught us that that's who we are. All this mental health stuff, right? Like, yes, it's true, and then the categorization can be helpful, but that's not who we are. And it's
Right.
that you're bloody well better step out of it, because it ain't going anywhere. I've seen it over and over and over again. Even with little kids, you don't let little kids go there. No, because they're going to self-destruct before they're 10. That you have to get them sitting. You have to embody. You have to get them embodied, right?
Right. You have to control their embodiment and get them in the ritual. Sit down to eat.
Yeah.
Right. Sit
Yeah,
at the table. Right. All these little things that aren't little. They're huge, and they build up over time. And if you're not constrained, I know a lot of people who are like, well, I'm always up until 2 a.m. Of course, I'm kind of famous for, especially when I was not sick, I could sleep 4 hours a night. So I was up all night long because I could go to bed at 1 a.m. and be up at 5 and there was no problem, or 2 a.m. and be up at 6, no problem. And so I'd meet these people and they're like, oh yeah, I'm up really late, but then they wouldn't get up in the morning. They get up at like 11 in the morning or noon or whatever. And I'm like, that's not good for you. And they're like, no, I've always been like that. And I'm like, no, you're almost certainly not like that. Like, this is, I know you've done that, but that's not who you are. Right. And they get confused and they think, no, I'm a night owl. And it's like, no, you're not a night owl. And I know people who had major illnesses, major illnesses, like chronic fatigue syndrome and things like that, all these mystery illnesses, Lyme disease, allegedly, all that stuff. And those illnesses, I've known multiple people, those illnesses went away the minute they went to bed by 10 p.m. every night.
Yeah.
The illness vanished.
Right.
Vanished completely.
Absolutely. Like
that's the liturgy, right? That's the liturgy.
Absolutely. And ritual, and that's why, so I don't really understand why people need to be discussing. It seems very strange why people need to be discussing what's going on your live stream in other places. I don't quite get it. Like what is going on?
They were being critical. I mean, look, here's Ethan. Ethan is quoting many people. Actually, Mark and Manuel are too mean and they don't respect people's opinions. And it's like, yeah, well, first of all, yes, I don't respect your opinion. I'm sorry. I'm happy to talk to you, and I'm happy to listen to what you have to say. And I will. And I do listen. Right. And the fact that you don't get the response you want doesn't mean I wasn't listening. That's not what that means. And I'm not saying I'm perfect and I'm listening perfectly all the time. But I'm saying the fact that you don't get the response that you expect doesn't mean I'm not listening. I might have heard you better than you really understand. Right?
Yeah, for sure. If there's one thing I've learned is that whatever really bothers me, it's about me.
Right. Well, and we fall into this critical skepticism, which I have a video on navigating patterns, just saying, right? This Socratic critical skepticism. And it's not healthy for us because where the hell does Jesse keep going? Because we're not that good at being critics and skeptics. We're just not that good at it. And it's not to say you can't do it or you shouldn't do it or it's always bad, but like you got to be careful with that stuff, man. Like, first of all, you're not Socrates. You're not. I'm sorry. You're just not. I'm not. I'm not trying to be, well, sometimes I'm trying to embody the Socratic method, different, but I'm not trying to be Socrates. No, thank you.
Right.
And yeah, and I think Ethan's onto it, right? People are so narcissistic, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
They're so upset when they encounter a person that doesn't validate them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was the point of Manuel's tweets. People are looking for validation. He made a whole series of tweets about agreement and the difference between agreement and validation. And it's just we're gonna do. I think we'll do a live stream on it. I gotta see if he has the time. But we'll
that's
probably do
really super. That's beyond important. Like it. I'm going to use. Can we say it's meta? No, but no. I'm absolutely. We're so lost. We're so lost. Yeah. We can't even see, and then everybody's mirroring it to everybody else. This nonsense. It can't.
His insights from that rando stream on Tuesday or Wednesday that was about my stream last week. His insights as a result of that stream are fantastic. They are so clear And he said some of them in the stream. He said, no, you guys are looking for validation, because he figured it out in the moment. But then he went on this Twitter thing the next day, and it was just brilliant. Because once you've had a day to think it through, right, you get all this new perspective, and suddenly you have all these insights. And the way he was sharing the insights on Twitter too was just next level stuff. I mean, Manuel is so brilliant sometimes. It just makes you realize you're a Muppet. It's like he is.
Yeah, he can stand back, right? Manuel can stand back. I don't know him very well, but I think there was just one time I saw him on this live stream, and he's amazing at that.
I've got some talks with him on navigating patterns, but yeah, we'll do another live stream about that, about agreement, participation, and validation, because that seems to be where things are. The mode of participation of some people is rebellion. It's just no. Whatever it is, no. And they have nothing generative or positive to say. And that's how you know. Are you saying something positive? Are you giving somebody feedback they can use and participate with? Or are you just saying you didn't do that right? You need to do better. And maybe that's what your father said to you when you were growing up or something. I don't know, but it's worth considering, buddy.
But why?
Because it's weird that people would do that. It's weird.
I don't understand it. I don't understand what's going on. Jesse, do you have any insight into all of this?
Definitions. We've gone through a whole time where things lack definition. Things lack consistency, right? And so when someone comes through and gives consistency and definition and redefines things, right? It's a threat to your sense of sanity or safety.
Freedom.
Yeah,
right?
that's brilliant. Jesse, that's really
freedom.
no.
I wouldn't say freedom.
Their freedom.
Keep going, Jesse. Freedom. No, but go with that idea. Yeah. Because keep going, because that's very important what you said.
Freedom's actually what's being free. The push for, let's use the word liberty, because I think that's actually the closer. The push for liberty, right, has once you you have liberty to redefine words and redefine terms, redefine principles, redefine how they're applied. Everything? Well, essentially, you reframe. Yes, that's the
liberty to choose the frame.
Yeah, like narcissistic framing that nobody else really gets. Like, let's be honest.
Choose the frame and change the frame to meet the words on the page.
Yeah.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
And so,
but even tonight.
Yeah. And so what's also happened is, because everyone's now a critic, being critical lacks definition. So when someone's actually critical and not a critique, there's a duality going on there. I'm sorry, it's a contrast, is probably better to say, right? So when someone actually gives a solid critique, a solid definition, it's an endanger to their sense of critic, right? Because their way of acting in the world. So that causes them to essentially disembody. Like they no longer have a sense of perspective, or their point of view is being challenged ultimately.
Well, yeah, and maybe their very essence, because their very essence is based on chaos, quite frankly.
It's one of their identities.
Yeah.
Essentially what's going on. I don't like to talk about identity because it's such a hard thing to pinpoint, but it's one of their identities, how they function in the world, probably better to say, changes.
Right. Okay. How they function.
They're embodying all these different spirits, all these different manifestations of what they think that they identify with. And as soon as you take one of them away, it's like the Jenga blocks analogy, which I keep going with. It gives them that instability, and then they've got nothing to go back on because they're not grounded in anything that's actually consistent.
Right.
It's what they're striving for. Right? They're striving for freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from constraint and consequences at the same time. And you can't do that. You can't live that way. You're ungrounded by default at that point. And now all of a sudden you're just upset at everything anyone does. And then you try to do what they do when you think they're being successful. And then it doesn't work for you because you don't understand their frame. You think you can just take the words or your interpretation of their words, which is worse, but that's all you have, right? And emulate them in their propositions or in a set of propositions that you've invented from your observation. And that's not them. And so, like, you can't be Elon Musk. Like, I'm sorry, you can't. It doesn't matter if you're smarter than Elon Musk. There's all kinds of things that happen that even I know nothing about. Probably nobody knows anything about. And I did want to. Ethan says Elizabeth needs to meet Manuel. William, pushing buttons activate old tapes, creating chaos amplified by social media. Yep.
Yeah,
And
that was
why
good.
did God create people to avoid solipsism? I like that. That's good. That's good. Tell that one to Peterson. But I think it is the spirit of freedom from consequences and constraints at the same time that causes people to critique. And then they're like, you didn't do this the way I think it should be done. And it's like, okay, dude, but I'm not on your project and I'm not you. So
the other thing that
nobody can believe it.
Catherine brought up here was the cyclical nature of things, right? So our sense of reality, or how we frame reality, right, has slowly shifted from a seasonal approach to life to a linear sense of progression, right? And so that's quite a divisive move there, right? When you're not able to have these sort of rest and repeat, right? Where everything's this continual march or continual revolution towards some indefinable unitopia, right? Which is basically to zero, going back to zero, just in a different way.
I'm laughing because it's exactly true. Oh my gosh.
There's no story there. And Unitopia literally means no story. Like literally, because once you get to Unitopia, you can't have drama.
Say that? Oh wow!
Once you get to a Unitopia, there can no longer be drama, challenge, consequence, questions.
Right.
Everything's being resolved.
Everything's been resolved.
Right, and that's what people are thinking this live stream is, that it's Unitopia, right? And it's not. It's reality. As best you can get on the screen. Well, as much as you can get on the screen, but the whole idea of embodiment, like I don't even know if people understand what they're talking about anymore because we're so disembodied, all of us, right? Like embodiment is, Mark, to your point, oftentimes is the gardening, right? It's the going for the walk. It's, making the meal. It's these simple little things that people have always done. Like it's in our bone marrow, I'm sure. These rituals, people, we don't understand even now the importance of rituals. I mean, good teachers did at one point. That's
or we
for sure.
won't accept the constraint because we want to be free from the constraint and the consequence.
Why do we want to be free though? Because we want to be free because we want to be crazy. Isn't that true? Like Don Quixote, back we go.
Right. Well, look, I mean, that's happiness. Constant happiness is insanity.
Yeah.
That's, William falling directly into utopia. Yeah. Well, that's it. That's it. But yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? How are you going to interact with the world? Where's the struggle? And if there's no struggle, there's no story. And if there's no story, what are you talking about?
And it doesn't.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, like you need sandpaper if you're going to have smooth wood. Has anybody thought of that? Like, it's critically important.
I like that.
Well, I didn't. Yeah, like
such an old phrase.
Those
it's like it sounds like something from the Victorian era.
Well, my husband was working today, building stairs for his little shed at the back, right? So it's in my head.
Oh, great.
Yeah. He's really he's really good with his hands, right? He can build anything. Can't believe it. It's hardly fair because we needed a bunkie, up for our little place without electricity, by the way. And we were the most cool looking people because we were very alive because we didn't have electricity. Because to your point, your body, even for 2.5 months, our bodies became non-linear. When you spend time in nature without electricity, you actually move into reality. To the point, like electricity's ruined us all. So
well, all those cycles, just the cycle of the temperature and the changes in the temperature go away because we've got HVAC, right? Right. It's like, I can keep the temperature within this range, right? If you live in Europe, most of Europe, the temperature changes are nothing compared to what they are in most of the US, right? And so you lose that, and there's a lot of stuff. Look, if you live down south, people move slow. Why? Because it's really hot. And if you move too quickly when it's 95 or 104 degrees out, you'll drop dead. You will. You'll either dehydrate or you'll give yourself a freaking heart attack or whatever.
That's
right?
my theory. I think that's why Canada is the craziest place, actually, because of the climate. And I'm quite serious. I think it's the bloody climate.
Well,
you can see that Jordan Peterson, you can see by listening to him
He's
that he
frenetic.
grew up in a super cold climate that was dangerous. I
Right.
think so.
Right.
I think
No,
that's
no,
a large part of him. Why
the
he
people in
interrupts.
New England, the people in New England are hard workers. Why? Because you have to work during the summer, and the summer is freaking short in New England. Otherwise, you won't have anything in the winter. You will actually die. Like if you are not prepared, you're done. And that was true when I was growing up. It's not so true now, but it's still true. Like that. Oh, you get, in the winter, you get to go out and shovel snow sometimes. And sometimes that takes a couple of hours. So now you got to get up 2 hours early to get to work.
Right.
And yeah, it's a big difference not having that linear sort of same LA kind of, oh, every day is the same, man. It's all good, right? It's like, nope, that's not like that in New England. And that teaches you to be on the move, and it sharpens your awareness because you have to be aware of the weather because it can kill you. And yeah, it's a big difference.
What did you guys think about what is it Catherine was saying about conscious? I didn't understand that. Did you either of you understand?
I did. It's probably a stream on its own. It gets into how you want to not want to say frame, but what's your telos with spirituality? That's where it gets into. Like what's happening when these energies or these principalities and principles manifest, and how do you want to deal with them? And so I was not debating with her, but I was slowly trying to see if we had a shared notion of what presence is and how things. I don't like to describe things to be unconscious.
I know.
Per se, right. I think this, and I don't like to say you don't want to make the materialism distinction, although it is helpful. But
right, I agree.
It's far better to go to the symbolic, which I was trying to get to, and I still don't have it mapped out. But what I will say, one thing I have worked out this week is how do you know when you're dreaming and not dreaming? It is the perspective. It is the point of view.
Tell me, because I was really interested last week when you were talking about that.
Well, it's I'm trying to develop like Mark, like a series of tells of one of my ones is how do you know you're not a Muppet? Like literally, like what like how do you know you're not someone that's above the standard norm? Like because it'd be very hard to essentially other people have to describe that to you. They have to give you that. Say like, no, you are valuable, you are above Muppet status, but you can't know that, right? It's like you can have the self-belief, but it can be completely wrong, essentially. The other one is how do you know when you're not dreaming? And I literally think it is a point of view. It is the perspective that you hold, because in your dream, as soon as if you're in this unconscious dreaming state, once your perspective awakens, you could say, you realize that you're in a dream, and in that moment you kind of snap out of it. So like that's how you kind of get out of the fantasy too. Right. It's like you have to change your point of view, your perspective.
Well, and literally, right? When you're dreaming, there's a switch, there's a chemical switch in your brain where your body is paralyzed. It's actually paralyzed. And so in order for you to dream to some extent, at least as deeply as you do at night, you need to be disconnected from your body to do that. And now all of the embodiment that happens in your brain is entirely in your brain because it cannot manifest physically. That is a protection method so you don't sleepwalk all over the damn place. And when that protection method goes wrong, you can look up the cases of sleepwalking. You can see what happens, right? Because our ideas have to die, to Peterson's point, so that we don't have to. Well, if in order for that to happen in its purest form at 100%, you need to disconnect from your body. And that happens at night when you dream. And that's why it is a matter of perspective. And I think, look, Catherine's struggle, which is a real struggle, she had that wonderful Thunder Bay conference. And, unfortunately, the thing that I certainly thought should have happened was we didn't start with or even attempt to get to a definition of consciousness or conscience, which I think would have been really useful. Like that, maybe that would have taken up the whole conference, but that would have been an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah.
And there are very good reasons why that didn't happen.
Like,
none of them
one
are
thing-
Catherine's fault, obviously, but it was a wonderful time. Elizabeth and I were there. It was great. But also, yeah, it would have been nice had we gotten to the bottom of that, because that definition is key. What is consciousness?
I agree. I think it, to me, it feels like it smells, it feels critically important. This consciousness and this unconscious. Jesse, what are
psychological or is it existential? Because the scientists use consciousness to describe soul, and they just pretend they're not doing that because they're jerks, as near as I can tell. Or actually, they're probably not bright enough. Like they probably just don't have the cognitive capacity to understand the ethereal because they're not grounded. And like, fair enough. I mean, I feel bad for them, but that's MIT, man. I spent years wandering the MIT halls, and yeah, it was sad to listen to them talk. And then when they did get into that, they made it about philosophy. And I'm like, can't you just go out and like pick a flower? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? It's not like there aren't flowers. It's a beautiful campus. It's not as beautiful as Harvard, but it's a very pretty campus. And you're right by the river, by the Charles River, and there's plenty of ways to engage with nature over there. Plenty. You go sailing. The sailing club. Well, they had a sailing club there, but there's a sailing club like right across the river. You can just walk there, walk over the bridge, go do your sailing. Oh yeah, the sailing. I did that one summer. My mother bought it for me one summer. It was great. You go out on little boats. A very, very different sailing from the sailing. I was just sailing on the ocean in a quiet bay. That was a lot different, man. Because the Hancock Tower, for example, there was a certain point you had to know where it was, and of course it shifts because it's wind. So there's a certain point where the tall building, and if you're not ready and you hit that boat's going right over, man. I've been in many boats that my father used to love to tip that stupid catamaran because he was just.
Yeah, but sailing's really talk about sharpening your attention, right?
Oh yeah,
and you're
learn a lot of stuff.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
it's
like
hard.
Sailing is, I don't know. It's
but
pretty.
When
it's
you
talk
can
about
do
embodiment, right? You're working with the wind.
But when you can do it and do it well, and you can start to see because there's two cues in the ocean, right? There's the cue of the current, and you need to know that, and there's the cue of the wind. And man, because certain wind patterns look the same when the wind is not, and you have to know that. And I can't even tell you how to do that, but I can tell you that I can, right? And you can discern between the current and the wind, and you need to, because otherwise you're not going to be able to sail successfully because you get caught in a current. So in Maine, where I used to sail at Hills Beach, there's a river that comes in, and the river current is pretty freaking strong. And if you don't have enough wind, you cannot afford to get caught in that current the wrong way. And if you get caught in the current, because that happens, you need to get the hell out. You need to know how to do that on too little wind. And there's a way to do it, but you better know what it is, or you're going to get smashed on the rocks. And it is dangerous. Williams says, Good Will Hunting. Well, that is one of the best movies of all time. And I will fight anybody who says otherwise. And they are automatically wrong and should probably not be listened to about anything ever, because it is such a brilliant film. Go ahead, Jesse. Go ahead. Make my day. I will fly my ass to Australia and straighten you out the embodied way. Go right ahead. Make fun of my favorite movie. Go ahead. Do it.
I won't though. I'm too much of a gentleman to do that takedown, but I will do it at some point. One thing I think I have mapped together in some ways is that consciousness and unconsciousness are like rhythms. So a rhythm is both a pattern and a feeling, right? So your musical rhythm, right? The spaces between things matter just as much as the places where you're emphasizing.
Yeah.
And even then, when you're emphasizing, right, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So you can still have these, but then in between those are called the off beats or the end beats or the extra bit of material, right? That's unconscious in some aspects, but you can feel that with other senses of patterns of rhythms, right? So things can lock in together. So you have both pat and feeling happen at the same time with consciousness. That's kind of where I'm starting to play with consciousness, is that in ruminating on, to your point, Mark,
Pattern and
is that
feeling.
so, you know, because when you're fully conscious, you're in a rhythm, you're in a feeling, but also there's an implied sense of things that are unconscious to you. There are other patterns and feelings that you might not know yet, and they kind of need to be brought up or defined, and then they're conscious. That's
So
kind of the model I'm working with.
what do you
It's a
mean?
musical theory. It's a musical and symbolic theory.
Yeah, but they need to be defined and then they're conscious.
Because you can't hear them until you. If it's a musical and symbolic theory, you can't hear these unconscious rhythms or these unconscious patterns until you define them. But they are there. You can imply them in the spaces between things,
Right.
which is what's called a groove, right? Or the backbeat, or a feeling, right? A lot of 70s music has this sense of there's spaces between things. Things are not as sharp and precise as possible, but it has a groove, and you get into that groove, and it's very hard to get out of that groove once it begins.
Is
it,
it,
the actors have to tell you, okay, now the song's over. Otherwise, you could just be in that groove for like, you know, forever, which is what disco music is. But I love it. I love Barry White. I've got 11 Barry White albums, guys. Like, I love the disco era. I think it's fantastic. That's just me.
That's good. Wow. Pattern and feeling.
Yeah.
So
that came up on Twitter, right? With Drewscology there. Yeah, that was so interesting.
Yeah.
And I tried to incorporate as much of that as I could, but I didn't call out rhythm in particular. So my bad. It's a busy day. Right. I did not have enough time to finish up those last few things. I left work really late. I was like, oh crap, I got no time. I got to stop at the grocery store. I got to eat. I had like an hour. I'm like, there's not enough time. So I didn't get that in.
Do you think it's fair to say though that embodiment is
you embody a rhythm?
But is it unconscious? Aren't we is it embodiment? I don't know. I like to think it's unconscious.
The way I use conscious and unconscious, and I do a video on this on navigating patterns, right? The way I have videos on everything. It's my goal. To have a video on everything. All the important everything.
Not why Good Will Hunting is good though. So you're gonna have to make that.
I will have a video on that soon now. It's gonna be my priority. I'm probably gonna record it tonight just to challenge you. No, I think that the easiest and best and simplest model for conscious and unconscious is that it is a dividing line, right? And that the things that you're embodying you can only inform embodiment through exemplification. You cannot inform embodiment through a proposition. It is actually not possible.
I love that. That is so, yes.
If you read Flowers for Algernon, which is a wonderful book, I think I've only read that one twice. I have it in the shed somewhere. But there's a great part of the book where he's talking about watching the two people making donuts. They both make donuts that look the same, but they use completely different techniques. And he's so focused on the technique instead of the end result that he can't do it. And I just thought that was so brilliant. Yeah, everything else in the book, I'm ambivalent about. But that point, I'm actually like, no, that's the most important point in the book. That's actually the most important point of the book. Everything else that happens before and after is like, nah, and it's important and you need it. But like, everybody finds these other points in the book and they're like, it's so beautiful. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. The only point in the book that was really important was that point about two different people getting the end result through completely different methodologies. And the thing is, it's a book. So he's describing that in a way, and it actually freaking works. And I would love to be an author that was good enough to do that, right? Wow. And that, to some extent, that's part of what I do in my videos, right? I'm trying to use propositions to show you something completely unpropositional in nature.
It's funny. It's quite funny. It's humorous, right? What you're doing is very humorous. I don't think people understand how funny you are.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you noticed. Yeah, some of it is, right?
We do try to laugh a lot here.
Right?
But it's very playful what you're doing. I don't think people catch the playfulness from this. Like there's because I bet you Jesse can explain this to me and articulate it, but there's they don't see that piece at all. It's as if, well, I don't even, they're not on, people aren't on the stage. None of, we're all in the same boat, more or less, except for maybe you and Jesse. But I think it's so, oh, and Ethan, I mustn't forget my friend Ethan.
No, you mustn't.
He really understands this.
Ethan's unbelievable. Right? Yeah.
He's so, wow. The things he says, and I don't know where he comes. I don't know where he gets. I don't know where any of you get this from, but the whole idea.
Suffering.
Okay, keep going. So, yeah, I think.
Suffering.
Yeah, I think so. But what's another word? Come on, the words. Can't we just have another word, guys? Come on.
Mark's description also happens in music. You literally can have one person play the solo piano, right? And you'd be like, that was very academic. Well done. Clap. Right. Points of technique. And you have someone that plays it sort of off, and it's a bit, it's not traditional, but it has feeling. It has emotion. And then, there's kind of these two divided lines between left and right brain and what preferences you want. It's like, you have to do it completely as if Bach would play this. Or you're like, no, this is my interpretation of the pattern, literally, of the music. So there's a sense that, and there's not, like, you can never perfectly reproduce a piece of music. That's just the people that, it's the same thing with AI. Like, the AI will always give you the same result. It's just BS. It's just completely BS. Nothing is reproducible. Like, even the phenomena of recording, right? I'll make a recording, I'll send it to you, right, through the internet, depending on which device you play it on. Right. If you hear it on headphones, if you hear it from your speaker, hear it from your laptop, hear it through fancy speakers, hear it out in public, that reproduction will always sound slightly different.
Right, which is what I was talking about at the beginning with this live stream. Right? Like, that's true. Things are complex.
Embodied differently.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. This whole idea of embodiment, and ritual. But Jesse, I don't know. It seems to me we are so, maybe you people aren't, but we're so far removed from it that it feels spooky, But maybe you live in a world of artists.
We actually live in a world lacking in art, lacking in artifice or in craft.
I know, but you personally, I mean, I suspect.
Oh, right.
That,
yes.
You have that world around you, I mean,
I can't not though.
I think you're right, though. I understand that. I get that. I don't think people understand when Mark says that, when he says, not, how do you explain that it's not is it a place? How do you explain that? There's a place, and I don't know. I guess you have to be able to, I guess you can't explain it. You have to see it, right? You have to see. Yeah.
You can pattern it for people, but getting them to feel it, it's tough. Very tough. Very tough. Because it is literally a spirit of play.
Yeah.
Literally a spirit of play. And some people have not learned to play properly with others. You have, and in all fairness, if people have gone through the university system, right. They've been conditioned, literally taught to embody a sense of academics as a preference set, as a value set above play. Like you have these different sets of schooling. We don't need to go into all the different sets of schooling, but even then, there's a value hierarchy or a preference structure of how you learn and interact with others, right? And that's why I say, like, how do Mark and I, or all the other fabulous people here, how do we get to our sense of uniqueness here? Is literally through suffering. Like there is no other way that you can embody different things, or struggle, or challenge, or questions. It's just preoccupation, rumination, embodiment, right? Like
it's the Beatitudes. Like that isn't just like an interesting, way of looking at life. It's true, Blessed are they that mourn. Like it's true.
Yeah. Well, Ethan says, listen to early Beethoven piano sonatas and then late ones. Yeah. Well, and I think it's one of the other good things. Oh, shoot, I got to put this on the Discord server. One of the other great things that Vervaeke talks about, even though I disagree with his terminology about serious play, because he is trying to revive play for adults. Now, the implication there, though, is that you didn't play properly as a child because you're so broken you have to do it again. And I think that's right. I think we have a bunch of children, a bunch of 30, 40, maybe even 50-year-old children, 20-year-old children, right? We've got they're 4 years old, right? And they're like, and then they find one of these, philosophers, right? They find Kierkegaard, or they find Heidegger, right? Or they find Hegel, and like, they're so smart. They're 4 years old. They're literally making the same argument as a 4-year-old. And if you interacted with a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old, you would know this, because you'd hear that argument. It's really no more intelligent. It may have fancier, longer, multisyllabic words, but it's no more intelligent.
Yeah, I actually disagree with you about the 4-year-old. I bet the 4-year-old is far above those people, seriously, because they're so open. And so true, I think I don't know. I would compare them. I don't even know to what. I was going to say a rock, but no. But you know what? The thing about play, there's a fun element to it as well. It's quite funny because when you engage in serious play, well, you're all in the same stage, right? You're on the same game, so to speak. So you can get it.
You should be.
Get it. Well, more.
You should be.
Depends, but yeah.
But that's my objection to the use of the term.
Like, I have to learn to cooperate.
Right.
And it's very obvious when people don't cooperate.
You have to participate.
Well,
and then when you participate, you have to participate in a generative fashion. That's true cooperation. Now you can say, well, I'm participating by criticizing you. That's like, really? I mean, that's a type of participation, but it's a terrible type of participation, and it makes you not a good person.
But it doesn't even, I can't even understand how it happens, because look at you, Mark. you look at you it's not like you're not giving a message even visually. There's a clear visual message here, right?
But it's not clear, Elizabeth. So what happened, you probably didn't see this, and you probably shouldn't watch it, because it's like,
I'm probably getting very bored.
5+ hours of a ridiculous live stream. So I'm sitting there, I'm sitting on this live stream in the comments. I came on later after Chezi left, and he's saying like, well, this stream, the one that I did last week, that you were there. And that was the other thing. They were only talking about me. I'm like, I wasn't the only one on the stream with Richard, guys. I don't know why you're complaining about my behavior and not differentiating it from everybody else's. Like, that would at least be a valid form of critique, even if it's not a valid critique. But hold on. Literally what he's saying is, well, a just chatting stream should be, and I'm like, dude, why did you think that was a just chatting stream? It wasn't called just chatting. I gave you the rules for engagement in the stream, and they aren't the rules for just chatting. Well, and he made that mistake 3 or 4 times. Manuel was pissed. Manuel was there saying, no, you're wrong, because it was a lie. It was just a lie. It's like, how did you watch my stream and not realize it wasn't a just chatting stream? How would that even happen? And yet you can see it happen. And I'm like, I don't know how you do that. Like, is your comprehension that low, or were you actually not watching? I mean, I hope you weren't watching. You're acting out of pure ignorance, believing you saw something, but you didn't take any of it in because maybe you were busy or doing something. Fair enough. But you were busy and you missed stuff. And at that point, when that's pointed out to you 3 or 4 times, maybe you should just stop trying to critique and say, oh, I'm ignorant of this. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about it.
Can I suggest something here? You can share a critique, right? Because a critique is a definition. It's a point, it's a signal that you're pointing out. But when you're in the mode of criticism, when you're embodying that spirit of criticism, it's very hard to get out of that, right? I can share a critique with you and define something, but I can and that can be in the spirit or the embodiment of criticism. When you're in that, that's when you're essentially in debate, and that's when it's kind of friend enemy, win lose, etc.
Oh, that's better. Yeah,
but
I agree.
Criticism is like, okay, I'm just pointing something out. It's up to you whether you receive or want to receive the communication that I'm giving you.
Well,
But as soon as things, then you can have a dialogue about the criticism.
well, then
But
that's
as soon as you
that's
submit
part of the
yourself to
problem.
that spirit of
Right, but that's what I pointed out in the beginning of this monologue, which I think is right to the point of embodiment. I get good criticism from you, Jesse, from you, Elizabeth, from a bunch of people that no one sees because they're not dumb enough to do it in public because that's rude. First of all, just to let you know, like, no, you don't criticize somebody in public. That's unacceptable. Now, I'm not saying never, but look, if I go to you and I have a conversation with you in private and I critique you and you're a jerk about it and you don't change, then yeah, maybe I'll go public with it. But you don't go public first. Like nobody, that's just obnoxious and arrogant.
It's the whole problem with the world in which we find ourselves now. It's just like it's like this bloody little microcosm happening here. It's insidious.
It's the Muppet crisis. It's literally the Muppet crisis. Literally.
Yeah, for sure, it is.
It's the lack of common sense.
Yeah,
common sense.
Yeah. Common sense, concordia, right? Like
we don't have a common sense. We can't do sense making together because we need common sense, which means we need to have something in common. And we keep talking.
You can't get there through criticism. You can get there through critique. But how you do the critique is important.
Well, but also the more of this you're doing, the less embodied it is. The reason why public criticism doesn't work and private criticism does is because the two bodies are closer to one another. Even if it's online, even if it's over Jesse could criticize me right now here in public on this forum where we have video and voice available. Okay. In the live broadcast, okay? But any critique he actually gives me, any sort of criticism he gives me in Twitter on a private message is more embodied.
For sure.
It's more constrained and more contained, even if it has less information, because I can't see him in Twitter, at least not yet, and I don't need to, right? It's more pointed. It's better framed. You want to go medium is the message, whatever, I don't care. But it's actually important that it's done in private because that is part of the intimacy crisis. Why are you publicly talking about somebody else's stuff when you won't do it in private? Why is that okay? And I'm not saying never, because there are times when that's the appropriate thing to do. But like, why are you doing that? Like, I criticize Paul Vanderklay all the time. And I sometimes do it in public, but I don't ever criticize him in public without having criticized him, say, directly in comments or an email. And you wouldn't know that, by the way, because you don't see my emails to him, and nor should you first. And so a lot of these critiques, you go, oh, you're critiquing, look, and I'm having a conversation with my friend Paul Vanderklay, and we are friends.
Exactly. They're decontextualizing it, because I saw when you were interacting with him last week, you can tell there's warm feelings. You can tell you're friends, just the way you talk to each other. There's playfulness even there.
And you because you saw us at Thunder Bay. We shared a table.
Well, we
were
feel
sitting next to each other. I drove him to the paintball event. We don't wonder he loves my car. I was like, thank you. I'm so happy somebody loves my car. We have that kind of personal relationship, even if I can't hit him with a paintball 4 freaking times for some unknown reason. Take that as you will, but it actually happened, and I'm still angry about it. I'm like, I had him with a paintball. I had him. There's that level of intimacy there in the relationship. That's why somebody said, like, oh yeah, I enjoyed your randos conversation. And I was like, I've never had a randos conversation with Paul. I've never signed up for a rando slot, and I never would, because that is too impersonal for me. And we met more or less on the Discord. I mean, it's not the first time I saw him. It's the first time. And that's why I was able to skip the line, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not a rando. I was never at any time a rando. Paul and I were always interacting in a way based on my comments, which were to help him in his mission. And, I've had a lot of people say, oh, your comments on Paul's videos are scattered and you need timestamps. And I'm like, I don't work for you. And this isn't for you. You're welcome to read them. And if you get something out of them, great. But I go do my comments on Paul's videos for Paul because he says he wants comments, and I think I can give him good feedback. And sometimes I seem to manage it. And that's the problem, is that like that's a level of intimacy, because I know I'm talking on a public forum, but I'm talking to Paul. I'm not talking to anybody else. I know you want to understand it. That's fine. But I'm not catering to you as the audience. I'm catering to Paul as the audience, because I think I know how to talk to him in a way that's helpful to him. And sometimes I seem to manage it. And he's very generous with his feedback and tells me when that's the case, which is what's important, because it's easy to critique somebody if you never give them feedback.
Right. Yeah, well, but it's important. I mean, this is like, and I was listening to Peterson talking about freedom of speech. Oh, with that Greek man that it just came out. What was his name? Oh, I don't have his name anyway. He wrote, yeah. And this is a freedom of speech issue, actually. You know, because people are so thinking that constantly we need to monitor each other's speech. No, we actually don't. We actually need to really open the windows to everybody else's way of seeing things. It's so enriching. Just because I'm here doesn't mean that I agree that you agree with me about everything, right? And that's part of the fun of it.
Oh no, we have massive viewpoint disagreements, you and I, Elizabeth, and so I have massive disagreements with Jesse too, and Sally Joe and Ethan, and we all, and that's the beauty of it, because we're all bringing our own perspective in a positive way, and we know that we're doing that. Like, we understand where each other's boundaries are, even if Jesse thinks he's going to cross my Goodwill Hunting boundary and survive. We understand where those boundaries are, at least, and that's what gives it the level of intimacy that it has. I do want to address this. Benjamin Franklin, it's common sense good. It's required. It's not good or bad. It's required. Or is there really such a thing as bad as a crowd? Both, two things can be true at the same time. Ben Shapiro is famous for saying this. William, Mark, determinist, not random. Well, the opposite of randomness is not determinism, but I do take your point, and I will acquiesce.
Yeah, I think
the other thing too here probably is happening, Elizabeth, is that there's been this very significant lack of practical applications to ideas in the world. People are not used to pragmatism, right?
For sure.
Right, because everything has to be from the mode of single identification and naming single identification onto things, right?
Right.
Oh, hold on. Look at this. This guy comes on my freaking stream, on my live stream, and he's commenting in the comments. How bold is this? Yes, Mark does have some incorrect traits in music. Do you believe this? It's actually tastes. Still can't type. You know, and how am I able to take this? I drove Ethan to Thunder Bay from the Minneapolis airport. We had hours and hours of conversation together, right? We have an intimate connection. We have a level of intimacy that allows him to insult me pretty much any way he wants at this point. and because of the intimacy, I know it's in good fun. And because of the intimacy, I understand and can take and integrate that critique. And look, I mean, I know my taste in music, we had a rousing argument, although I think Ethan's totally wrong, about whether or not Iron Maiden had real albums, because some of their albums contain songs from other albums, and he was like, well, those don't count as albums, and I'm like, they're called albums, like, you know, and it was fun, and I think it was 2.5 hours on and off of arguing this one point, and that's okay, but it's only okay because of what came before, and this concept of time and embodiment is really important. I've crossed the boundary now. He's angry, but it's that intimate relationship, right? That you know, and it's important. It's like, well, you know, this person was hurt, and I can tell because I was hurt. Yeah, but they stayed after the live stream.
Mm-hmm.
So how hurt were they really? Like, are you sure? Because it didn't seem that their actions didn't say that. So the fact that you felt that doesn't mean they felt that.
Well, that's the
That's
over
the-
compassionate mother. I hate to tell everybody who was commenting, but you're being and that's, you know, I have trouble with Peterson talking about it all the time, but seriously, that's what this is. This is a perfect example of the over compassionate mother, and it's not true. It doesn't fit. There is no common sense to it, as you were saying. Yeah, for sure. Some guy made a comment. I was commenting on Peterson going on and on about the over compassionate mother. So I had to put my little thing in. I said something like, yeah, Dr. Peterson. And someone nailed me on my comment. And I was so thankful because I deserved it. Because I've been carrying on too much about it. So what's that say about me, right? Come on.
Right.
Yeah. And somebody had the insight to nail me. It was brilliant. I was so thankful, like, because people aren't usually thoughtful, intimate. Like we're not intimate enough even on Twitter in some strange way, or in comments.
Right.
We're not. Like that was an intimate comment. The man made a very intimate comment back to me, and it was so on the mark. And that kind of thing is, I mean, I don't know what what you'd call that, Jesse. Like, what
you need
is
to get
that?
in the spirit.
It was a but it was like my first reaction was what, and then I thought you hit, like it took me about 30 seconds. I thought you hit the nail on the head with me. You know me. I'm the spirit of my comment had told him the whole message, right? And I needed correcting. So that's just going to keep me on the straight and narrow about my reaction, right?
Well, yeah, and that's important. Yeah, there is a way to engender intimacy in that way.
I was surprised. Like that was a gift. This guy gave me a huge gift, and I can't even tell you. I don't even want to describe it.
Ethan and I met on the internet, and then it's like he's like, because I was like, oh, I'll drive you, I'll pick you up at the airport because I'm going to be at Sally's, and I got to go through, it wasn't the quickest way to go to stop at the freaking Minneapolis airport and pick up Ethan. And he was like, really? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. That would be great. And he couldn't believe it at first. He was like, you're really going to stop at the airport and give me a ride? I'm like, absolutely. And he was kind of like, you're going to figure out what time I get there and be there waiting for me. And I'm like, yes.
Wow.
Right. Because I'm like, I don't care about my schedule. And look, we were, I would have honestly preferred to get there before everybody else, but I couldn't do that. And I was willing to give that up to spend the time talking to Ethan and meeting with Ethan. And like, it was way worth it it was way more worth it than I could have imagined. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Before it even happened, a bunch of stuff happened. I've told the story before, but before it even happened, I went to Minneapolis early. I had this wonderful experience because I had an insight the night before about something I had missed with Sally's books. And I was like, oh, and I got all that done. And then I discovered this magical man-made lake in the middle of the city. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I go to the airport and I meet somebody at the post office and she sees the books and she's amazed. And then I pick up Ethan and we're driving down the road and he's teaching me all this stuff about music. And, it was just a magical experience. And like the thing was too, I mean, I've been online, most of my life. So I've got this sense. I'm like, no. Ethan is Ethan all the time in some significant way, right? But he's Ethan all the time. Like the way he presents online is the way he presents. And that's the end of that. And I knew that from raw experience, right? I knew that from raw experience. And it was so wonderful.
Yeah, indeed. But these are like pilgrimages, I think. These, I think Thunder Bay was like a pilgrimage. And then the one
Yes, and that's the thing. I made this comment on one of Bern Power's tweets recently. I said, the problem is that entertainment is a modern attempt at making a pilgrimage without having that aspect to it. And look,
without having the embodiment.
Bumper to bumper cars in the passenger pickup, and he was right there on the curb. As soon as I walked out of the terminal, I was all the way against the curb. There were three rows of cars deep, and I was like, nah, this isn't going to do. This is Ethan, man. I got to get all the way up on the curb and make sure that we're ready for that.
Wow, that's friendship. But yeah, what did Bern Powers interview you, Jesse?
Yeah. Well, we had a talk. We had a talk.
What was it?
I have a lot of time, love, and affection for Bern. I hope to talk to him again. I have some observations from our talk together. I would be happy to share with him. For me, I find it more, I guess, the best way to get to know each other is to really sit and ruminate on something. If you go between things too much, especially when you first meet, it's hard. Like you're almost trying to associate and identify with someone with too many things. You need to build a strong sense of connection on one thing. So since we all worship these things, we all value these things depending on how we have these shared ideals, and then you can find out the differences and contrasts. So, in particular in that talk, I would have liked for just to been about Christian music, even though that'd be a brutal topic for me because it's such a burden I carry having done that. And even as I'm talking about, but yeah, it's it would be because that's it's because at least then it is that shared sense of even if it was difficult for me or was difficult for him, it has that shared sense of camaraderie around something that's like these streams. It's a solid foundation.
The body.
So it's the body, yeah. So that's So I'm hoping to do that.
Build a body around a common spirit like that. Yeah, and that was the most common spirit that, he needed to know something and you knew a lot about it.
My, that's an interesting statement you just made, Mark. You said you can build a body. Man, here we're going, like talking about embodiment. You can build a body. Did we all hear this?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
What do you think the live stream is? It's just it's one part of the larger body of the wisdom community work that we're doing.
But once again, like to Jesse's point, you have a topic, right? Like it's really clear. The frame is pretty clear,
Right.
It and nicely, but nicely drawn and colored and everything for half an hour, right? It's not.
And notice too, right, that the spirit of, say, camaraderie or whatever requires a sacrifice. So there I am sacrificing trip time, arrival time, all kinds of things to make sure that I pick up Ethan when he lands. Not when it's convenient for Mark, because what's convenient for Mark is the most efficient, expedient thing, because I am so ruthless. I was just like, no, I want to get there. Right? Well, I got to South Dakota in 2 days from South Carolina. And go look at that on a map. That's 2 12-hour days, man. And maybe I shouldn't even have done that, but I did it. And I'm perfectly happy that I did. I'm totally thrilled I did it in 2 days instead of 3. Should I have done it in 3? Almost certainly. I should not have done that in 2 days, but I did. And I enjoyed every minute of it. And I've got the right car for it and everything. But I doing a bunch of sacrificing, which, look, these minor sacrifices, as it turns out, I want to be early. I have to check out of the damn hotel, but he's actually not going to be there until late. And then because he doesn't land until later, we're going to be, in my mind, I'm not going to be first to the stupid Thunder Bay thing. Right. And it's like, oh, okay. But all this beautiful miracle, actual miracle, like I'm using that term in the biblical sense, happens as a result. And then there's a further miracle in all the stuff that like the amount of experiential information that Ethan gave to me in that car on that drive. I can't explain it in words. Like, it was amazing. He's like, oh, we're going to listen to this piece. Now listen to this in this piece of classical music. And then you can hear this. And here's what's going on, we'll say, in the artistic time frame, we'll say, which I'm learning more about, right? Because Sally, I did a talk on Sally Joe's channel, by the way, which is great. We should do another one, Sally. We will. Right. And so I'm learning more about how art precedes all the stuff that happens, right? How it moves the body, how it shows the spirit before the spirit gets embodied, right? And then it's like, oh, okay, that's so interesting, right? But I learned all this stuff in that car ride, and I learned a bunch of other stuff too. But like that music lesson was amazing. And we're driving through Duluth, and we're driving through these different places, and I'm hearing this music and this, it's like, listen to this frantic sound. It's like, oh, okay. It's it's like the hurriedness, right, into this and out of that, and it's like, oh, okay, and it all makes this stuff, because I'm a pattern person, right? It just pops. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes this make sense, and that makes sense, and all that, right? And we'll burn power, right? Most of it, honestly, I love Burn, but wow, man, did he go to the music clips are way too long, right? Like, I'm like, oh, this is just could be so much more compressed. But when he talks about where rap came from, and then he talks about breakdancing, and he just slides right by it. But for me, I'm like, whoa, hold on, that's world changing. That's like, wait a minute, what you're saying is dancing went from a cooperative thing to a competitive thing. And I was just like, whoa, and it's right there. And I'm just like, wow, breakdancing is like, and it comes out of the same ethos as rap. And rap comes from literally a stolen truck of audio equipment, professional audio equipment. And then it just continues that ethos, and the people from the Bahamas, right, are mixed up with this. It continues that ethos of piracy, actual piracy of the music. And Burn just slides past this. He just kind of points it out, and he keeps going with the series. And there's nothing wrong. I'm not throwing any shade on Burn. I love Burn, but I'm just like, holy crap, man! No, stop, cut it out. No, wow. Talk about that. Like that's huge. That like rippled out, right? But I can see that because I'm a sailor. Like, I know how to sail, literally. So it's like, oh no, I see the waves that caused. I see that.
There's also another insinuation to what happens after breakdancing is dancing becomes clubbing. So what was once cooperative now becomes aggressive by language, right? And then the environment that this dancing is no longer communicative. It is propositional, or it has a mode of exchange that is required. It's like, you're here in this place.
It's not propositional.
Well,
wow. Look, when Vervaeke says opponent processing, he's looking at the world, seeing opponent processing. That's not wrong.
I'm talking about motive behavior change.
Observe, right? But he's trying to put a positive spin on it by saying, oh, look, opponent processing, and we need that, right? But that's not correct. We want cooperative processing that's generative, because opponent processing is just critique and criticism.
I know I'll have to say it explicitly. When people go clubbing now, the intentionality behind that is the exchange of bodily warmth, right? It's that people, they're proposing, like they're proposing themselves onto others, and it's this aggressive tendency. It's no longer commutative, like, I'll get to know you, we'll do the cordial dance, you'll spin around, we'll exchange some words. Maybe if I get introduced to you again, like all the Jane Austen works, like, always have a dance scene. If you not notice that pattern, then you missed something. But all the Jane Austen, everything always ends up with some sort of dance scene, and that's where things get worked out. So, but now with the clubbing environment, it's like, no, things have already been worked out. And now it's just on who gets to propose to who, really. Like,
yeah, that would be a great live stream. Like that would be great to talk about dancing. That's so strange, because I was thinking of that today. I was thinking of those folk dances that the communities did generation after generation, right? And wow,
right.
But talk about embodiment.
The difference between a cooperative dance, a folk dance, and an opponent dance, where it's no longer about cooperation, it's actually about opposition or showing off or being independent and individualistic. That's huge. I just want to read some of these comments before we shut the stream down, because it is getting long in the teeth here for sure. And we've kind of reached the edge of embodiment. But Benjamin Franklin, on the subject of building bodies, notice that evolution kind of directs, no, it doesn't, us to build a body for our offspring. No. Through certain pleasures and certain pains. No. All bad framing, including the pleasure of adventure. No. The pleasure of, when you're talking about adventure, you're talking about the spirit of exploration. No, Ethan did not watch that video yet. Subtle bodies. No, I haven't watched any videos for today because I was working. I will watch that though.
Me too.
I hope it's not a Patreon video, but an actual like public one. But I don't remember seeing it, but I was busy all day today. We were trying to wrap something up.
I needed to watch some Peugeot.
The epistemology though of adventure is the progression towards a home. So
Yes.
something to think about.
Well, or the expansion of the home, or bringing
Yes.
something back to the home. Yeah, there's 3 at least ways to think about it. Benjamin Franklin, there is a kind of creative destruction embedded in the adventure of creating offspring. Dude, like, you're such a materialist. It's just like, it's hard to even understand how you function in the world, honestly. We are cyclical creatures, not continuous. No, we are continuous. That's what cyclical is.
Continuously cyclical.
Yeah, I don't. There is a destructive quality to us. No, there's no destructive quality to us. That's not there.
The
But
world
it's
is
the
not
kind of
broken.
destruction to make clear for new creation. No, you're just confused about how the world.
The world is not
Make
broken.
way
We are not
for it. No.
Gnostics.
Maybe I'm projecting. No, you
Gnosticism
are
wrong.
definitely projecting your crazy materialism onto everything you're saying. It's 100%. I can just tell you that right off the top of my head. Ethan,
Mark.
half yes. Hayden is credited with the invention of Scherzo, which literally mean joke. It was a joke because he took the minuet. I remember the minuet. I learned that in high school. I talked about that before, and sped it up to the point where you couldn't dance to it.
Wow.
Indeed. Yes, I remember you talking about this. This was around the time of, quote, the
No
Enlightenment.
way.
Yes. Well, and I
You're
learned the minuet
kidding.
in high school. I was in a magnet school in Lowell, Massachusetts, where I did most of my schooling, and or most of my early growing up, we'll say. And yeah, we learned that, and it was very. You dance with you hold the hand, and you do, and then you do, yeah. And I don't remember it all now. Yeah, that was where I got. That was the blue-eyed blonde, the first blue-eyed blonde that I just kind of fell in love with. Yeah, me and blue-eyed blondes, forget it. If you're a blue-eyed blonde, despite what you think, if you just say stuff, I'll just do it. I'm completely freaking powerless. I'm done, completely finished. Yeah, disembodiment. There we go. So yeah, I think that's a good note to close on. Yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Herb. Thank you, Jesse.
That was so much fun.
I'm glad you had
I'm
fun.
blonde. Come on. Oh, where is this going next week?
I've talked about it before. Elizabeth, it's great to see you. Thank you, everybody, for joining the live stream. We're going to do something next week. I'm not sure what the topic's going to be. We have a list, but we may not go in order. Thank you, everybody. Lovely to see you. Come back again next week. We're going to end.